morning. Welcome to the December 12th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. I'm Blaney Miller, Chair of the Commission. I would ask that everyone today to please be efficient with your comments and avoid redundancies so that we can hear from as many viewpoints on as many cases as possible today. Starting with public comment, we start every meeting with the opportunity for the public to comment on an item not contained on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda today? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. There are 3 items listed today. The first is to refer case Z3623 to our January 9th meeting in order to provide the applicant additional time to revise conditions. The final 2 are new rezoning cases Z4023 and Z5123. These cases are both what we call double inconsistent, meaning that the staff report deemed them inconsistent with both the comp plan and the future land use map. Our commission procedures provide that these cases be directly referred to the Committee of the Whole, which in this case will meet on January 28th. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved by Commissioner Fox. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? To approve the consent agenda? Any opposed? All right, that motion passes 7-0. Moving on to committee reports. We have 4 items from the Committee of the Whole. The first item is a rezoning case that was referred to the committee due to a double inconsistency, but we were unable to hear that case due to timing constraints. As a result, that case has been moved back to the full commission, and we will hear that case today. So without objection, I'd like to move this case, item TCZ 4923, to be heard as the first item under new business today, immediately after the committee reports. The other 3 items listed under committee reports are related to CP 722 and Z 9222, the comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning case associated with the New Bern Station area planning study. Commissioner Fox has previously been recused from these cases, and without objection, I will recuse her from these items again today. Thank you. These items first appeared on our agenda in April. I want to thank staff and the and Committee Chair Raines for their hard work on this case. I'd also like to thank the members of the public that engaged with us and provided immense feedback. Over the past, so since April when it first appeared, over the course of the last 8 months, we have heard these cases at 5 special and extended meetings of the Committee of the Whole, held in special settings to accommodate large public attendance and video streaming for the public. We've also received over 6 hours of public comments from citizens at the podium, and the Commission and staff have received and reviewed over 200 written comments and emails from the public. The committee has thoroughly reviewed staff's reports and presentations on the process and substance of the area planning study, the comprehensive plan amendments and its effects on all TODs citywide and on the New Bern corridor specifically, the 744 parcel rezoning case initiated by the city, and the 48 citizen requests to amend the 744 parcel rezoning. Based on that feedback, the committee took a number of actions. First, the committee and staff drafted and recommended to council a new text change to amend all transit overlay districts citywide to remove the prohibition on single-family homes and duplexes, along with other clarifying changes. The council has since voted to enact that text change. With respect to the 744 parcel rezoning case, the commission developed an analysis framework, and then for each of the 48 citizen requests to amend the rezoning, the Committee of the Whole went one by one through each and every parcel identified to receive additional public comment, review and discuss at the table, and then vote on the record. In addition, based on other feedback from the public, the Commission, with the help of staff, made other sweeping changes, including removing all Raleigh historic landmarks from the TOD, creating a policy to clarify the overlap of TODs and NCODs on all parcels in this area, and decreasing the heights along the borders with the Western Station area. As a result, at our last committee meeting, the committee voted 6-2 to recommend that the full commission send rezoning case Z9222 with those amendments to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. And then finally, with respect to the comp plan amendment, over the course of our 5 meetings and based on extensive feedback from the public, the committee asked staff to draft several changes to that comp plan amendment. Due to timing constraints, we were not able to review those amendments to the comp plan amendment at our committee meeting, so we will review those amendments today. Our deadline for action on both the rezoning case and the comp plan amendment are today, so we must move these items out to the full City Council at this meeting. Committee Chair Rains, is there any additional comments that you'd like to make before we turn it over to staff?
No, thank you, Chair Miller.
Thank you very much. Then with that, I will turn it over to staff for an update on where we are. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ira Mabel, Planning and Development. So there was interest at the committee of the whole meeting last time to sort of refresh everyone of where we had left off with the comp plan amendment. So I have some slides to walk through the changes that were made at your request. So not every single thing in the amendment, although we can do that if that's desired, but sort of the response to the request that you had made throughout the course of the discussion. So those affected 14 policies or actions or paragraphs in one case, which this is the full list. So this is a new one, policy inserted in 4, and I did renumber them all so that they, in your original packet, may have said 5, but now say 6 or something because of new ones. By original, I mean the one from April. So this is a policy recommending that neighborhood stabilization projects receive priority from the Public Project Community Support Fund over other types of projects that are eligible for that pot of money. This is a new policy I think Commissioner Miller just alluded to about clarifying the confusion for when a TOD is planned or proposed or requested to be mapped where an NCOD already exists. That the NCOD, if the TOD is approved, the NCOD should also be removed. And then there's also a similar one for the HOD as sort of a, in the similar train of thought, these two things conflict. To be clear, we are not proposing the TOD and the HOD, and we do not think, or staff does not plan to, but should someone who is within an HOD request it, would also be a similar state of confusion as to sort of like which rules apply. So should council wish to apply it, should not have both overlays. This is a revision. So we had originally proposed to look at installing speed cameras. That was changed the language to investigate what a program like that would look like and the impacts, intentional and unintentional. This is also sort of a similar refinement. The original study proposed a higher speeding fine for larger vehicles. So again, sort of like a study-based schedule action at this point. Action number 9, continuing on the vehicle safety theme, was about red light cameras. And so this action became to also review, the outcomes of the red light camera program we do have, rather than just a sort of clear action to install new ones. This is a narrative text that was made more specific as applying to New Bern Avenue and places along New Bern Avenue, and not just the city of Raleigh. This policy was revised to more clearly advocate for projects affordable to household earning incomes below 30% of the AMI, which it did not specify a funding target, affordability target before, just the percentage of the housing bond funds. This one was also easy to miss, but the 60 was changed to 30 there, so pushing for a lower or a greater degree of affordability in these projects. This one was added at the requested planning commission and modeled fairly closely on actually a the scope of work we received from Southeast Raleigh Promise to do this work. So that the list of activities there at the end were directly from sort of a program we have since funded since this CP amendment, the comprehensive plan amendment, was drafted. This is to remove the goal of adding affordable housing to the Tarboro Road Community Center redevelopment project. This was the suggestion of staff after we had done some more feasibility studies in the interim, and do not think it's really a suitable location. This is again specifying in the historic section, or the celebrating Black Raleigh section, to be more specific to New Bern Avenue. And the same as with this one. And with this one. And then just as a reminder, in addition to adding the policies and actions in the area-specific guidance section of the plan, there are some street plan amendments here, which we did not really discuss in great detail in the committee of the whole, but a realignment. So this is the nursery property, which is one of the public requests. So just extending the street grid from the north there and changing the east-west connector. And then on the south side of New Bern, again in the eastern station areas, sort of a different realignment of the network streets. So deleting Plainford Drive extension from the street plan and adding some other ones. So that is my presentation, the recap portion. I'd be happy to answer any other questions about it. The rest of the amendment that I did not talk about.
Thank you. I think we can start there. We didn't get a chance to discuss this at the committee meeting. Are there any other comments from the table about any of these changes to the comp plan amendment? Seeing none, I think this does accurately reflect what we requested, so thank you very much. Opening it up then to the rezoning case, we saw the amendments that staff made in the staff report based on our requests and discussions. Is there any additional follow-up from the commission about any of those changes that staff drafted at our request? Did you have one, Chair Reins?
Yes, thanks, Chair Miller. Just one comment on the memo that staff created. There was a note that we should ask City Council to authorize a text change to review how neighborhood transition standards are applied within the TOD. I wanted to discuss that at the table, and also if we needed to add that to the consistency statement provided by staff.
So that was in response to, I believe, Commissioner O'Haver was the lead on that. My suggestion, I'm happy to have the city attorney disagree, is that would be, if that is something you wish to recommend, would probably be best appropriate as a separate motion, separate from the case, the rezoning case. So you would, move on the consistency statement or any other consistency statement that you make. And then if you wish to also recommend that would be a second motion that council authorizes text change. I think that would be cleaner and allow them to exist separately. It's not really a rezoning, so it doesn't need the consistency. Perhaps Mr. York has different advice.
Understood.
Okay.
Thanks.
I see him nodding, so.
Mr. York, did you have something to add?
No.
Okay.
No, I agree. It needs to be a separate item,
Okay.
separate motion.
Thank you very much. Are there any other items that the table wishes to discuss?
Are we done talking about the comp plan amendment? Are we switching to the rezoning, or?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see any further comments. I would be happy to talk about the comp plan. Any other comments about either item?
Don't we have to take some act? I'm just confused, I guess, with the process of what we're doing. I'm sorry. I thought we were going to resolve one and then move to the other one.
Yes. I'm sorry, I thought I asked for, we can reopen or we can discuss any item that you'd like right now, but we can specifically discuss the changes to the comp plan amendment or any other items related to the comp plan amendment.
Well, I would just say the comp plan amendments generally do not have a consistency statement with them because, you're changing the comp plan, so by definition, you're changing something about it. But that would need so you would need a motion on the comp plan and a vote, comp plan amendment and a vote on that, a motion on the rezoning and a vote on that. And then should you wish to also recommend the text change, potentially a third motion to recommend that.
Understood. Yes. Sorry, we have not made any motions yet. I was just trying to open it up for discussion about any other items before we move to motions. But do you have additional comments about the comp plan amendment?
Well, I know we hadn't discussed the street plan amendments, so I wanted to hear if there were any comments. I don't specifically have any comments. I was just confused because I thought there was something that we needed to do before we moved from the comprehensive plan to the rezoning. So that's why I was asking. I didn't know if we were talking about them both at the same time and then taking action on them both at the end. So that was my question.
Sorry, that was initially my thought, is that we could
Okay.
discuss each one individually, just in case, in the off chance one might affect, the
Okay.
discussion might end up impacting the others.
Okay.
And then making our motions at the end, but,
That's fine.
yeah, okay. Are there any other items we need to take action on with respect to the street plan amendment in particular?
No, so, they are one package. Should any, portion of the comp plan amendment you wish to vote on separately, there is precedent for that. We tend to break those out into A and B. So if there is some portion that there is less consensus on or what have you, you could vote on them separately if you choose. Right now, they are packaged as one thing. That is sort of up to you. And then I do have one additional addition to the rezoning that was not in your packet, that I would, if you are willing, would like to present before you vote on that. But that's whenever you think that timing is.
Sure. So I guess just first, making the discussion of the comp plan amendment, is there any further discussion on the comp plan amendment? Yes, Commissioner Otwell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Miller. I'm pleased with the comp plan amendments, and I'm prepared to support a favorable recommendation. But I would like to comment that Action APSA 7, the Safe Streets for All, talking about the speed cameras, I appreciate the intent to study, to determine whether we feel this is going to inequitably impact the neighborhoods in which it's installed. So the new language is to study the pros and cons with an emphasis on equity, and I appreciate that. It would be nice to see an action come out of the study, such as provide a recommendation to council or some sort of follow-up besides just studying it. But we can follow up with that at a later time. Overall, I'm happy with this and ready to move on with it now.
Thank you.
Excuse me. So first, I want to thank Ira and staff for the tremendous amount of work that you put into this. I know you worked hard with what you brought to us initially, but I also appreciate your responsiveness to all of our questions and our concerns, particularly mine. I sent you a lot of emails, and I appreciate how you responded to each question or concern that I had. So thank you for that. I know what you do can feel like a thankless job sometimes, but I do appreciate the effort that you all have put into this. I think there might be some of these policies that could be tightened up or more detailed, particularly dealing with the neighborhood stabilization and the anti-displacement ones. Those are the ones that are highest on my priority list. But I know we could address that later through amendments or revisions. So I think this is a really good package of recommendations, and I'd be prepared to support the comprehensive plan amendment as well.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments from the table about the comp plan amendment? Seeing none, we can discuss the rezoning case as well before we make motions. Any further discussion about the rezoning case as it was amended by the committee and recommended by the committee to the commission?
I have a question. Were we planning to do public comment for the rezoning case?
So based on the fact that we've already received extensive public comment. This is just a committee report. I wasn't planning on reopening a new public hearing today. This is just implementing the changes that we made at the committee based on the public feedback, as opposed to making any new changes. So that was not the plan today, no.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how others feel, but I think for Z9222, I think it's big and complicated enough. So I would move to reopen up public comment if there's people that want to.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Those opposed? I guess I have to vote. Given the fact, well, based on the fact that we do have some time on the agenda today, I'll go ahead and vote in favor of that as well. We could open up some limited time. I would like to clarify again, this case was heard over 8 months at 5 committee of the whole meetings that were extended. And at the last committee of the whole meeting where we went through this rezoning case one by one, we provided an opportunity for public comment under each and every parcel that was identified during any comment or any email from the public over those 8 months. And today, we're not making any additional changes other than the votes that were made at the committee table. So with that, I would like to open up an additional 10 minutes of public comment if there are any additional members of the public who would like to speak about the rezoning case. If so, please come to the podium and then introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Hua Huang. I live in District D in Raleigh, and I have been following this case on the rezoning with the bus rapid transit and TOD, along with Ms. Octavia Rainey and the community at New Bern Avenue for some time now. So here are some thoughts I have. So this is what we've observed over the past 8 months. First, I want to make comment about the level of public engagement. I hear that the committee has received numerous public comment, but I will say on a personal experience, so I've done food distro for Meals for the Masses for some time, and I gotten the chance to talk with some of the people who receive food from us, and there were at least two people that I talked to who live in New Bern Avenue who have no idea this is happening. So I'm wondering the level of engagement that the city has actually done. Has the city actually done door-to-door canvassing? My impression is that that hasn't happened based on the people who I've talked to in the area. So I'm personally questioning if the level of engagement is in fact adequate. If we have people who still don't know what's going on, let alone understanding what is happening with the rezoning case. Number two, I think the city has said, and the staff has already acknowledged throughout the planning process that there's got to be massive displacement of Black and working class residents. I heard, at least with the comprehensive plan, with things innocuous enough that, there's some level of care that's going to be put toward anti-displacement, but it should be, my understanding is that with the TOD, this is going to be a wholesale upzoning that give away lots of density, and if that's being done, then my understanding is you would basically lose the process to work with the developers to co-plan more carefully what's being built in the city, and that's true anywhere in the U.S. and probably even more so here in North Carolina, where we have the whole Dillon's rule to prevent from passing local policy for any real progressive taxation. So if you pass a TOD, my understanding is you would basically lose the rezoning process on a case-to-case basis to work with the developers to encourage them to add amenities like affordable units, tree buffers, stormwater engineering, and all that stuff. And so I feel like, especially given that New Bern corridor should require special care, being the heart of the Raleigh Black community, I think it sounds like you can improve the transit infrastructure without necessarily upzoning things. Because when you're upzoning and you're increasing the price and the cost of living in the area, who are you really building this for? Because I know that bus route 15 is currently has a pretty heavy ridership from people who need to ride the bus to go to work in downtown areas or see the doctor and stuff like that. These are people who are working class people who need to take the bus. if they're being pushed out, then that ridership declines, and BRT is not going to help increase that ridership. So that's my understanding of that situation. The third point I want to make is much of the New Bern Avenue corridor, to my understanding, is already zoned mixed use at 35 stories. It has been for years. So, and it's entirely new, but in the entirety of New Bern Avenue is a frequent transit area. I already said that was a ridership issue. And so, yeah, without the TOD, lots that are within quarter mile of New Bern Avenue and mixed use zone already apply the density bonus up to 5 stories, even without the TOD. So, you can build the exact same type of development without this upzoning. And so this is something else that being brought up is also a density bonus. My understanding that to make the density bonus enticing, developers allow a height of more than 3-story overlay will discourage them from using a density bonus. So we'd like to have some more clarity on exactly how the city would actually encourage them to use the developer density bonus, especially like I know that there's been put forth in other rezoning cases, but I have not seen that density bonus being used in favor of building affordable housing to date. So just help me and help the people make that make sense on why or how density bonus is apparently not being utilized to build affordable housing at this point. So all that is being said is I feel that with this rezoning, number one, I feel like the city needs to do better on reaching out to the Black community, the working class community in the area that's going to be impacted, who I've talked to haven't heard about this at all, and try to arrange meetings with them so that where they can make it. 9 in the morning, lots of people are at work. I'm flexible to come here because I'm a student. I could delay what I do, what I actually am paid to do as a grad worker, to like late in the evening if I have to do this. But like not many people have that luxury, the flexibility. Got to arrange meeting with the working class when they are available. Second,
Well, thank you. Can I pause you for just a moment? We have a total of 10 minutes to speak. I want to see if there's any other members of the public who would like to speak today on this topic. Are there any? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, you can continue your time.
Okay. Second point I want to make is that I would like to know if the transit in the area can in fact be improved without necessarily upzoning or pricing people out of their homes. So that's it. That's the other point I want to make. And third is, I would like to see that the city actually takes care to ensure that there's preservation of the Black community and the existing affordable housing in the area at all costs, because the need for low-income, not just affordable housing, the need for low-income housing, in extreme low-income housing for 30% AMI is dire. I know that there's need for like, I know that staff talk about how, you got to do 20 to 40% of low-income housing or affordable housing, but like how many people in the area actually live there? Are you building the unit to actually match the number of people who need it? I would be curious to find out about that. So those are the points I want to make today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this case, either in favor or in opposition, or have any other comments? Seeing none, then I'll bring it back to the table. You may come to the podium and introduce yourself, yes.
So just an organizational question, clarifying question. My first time here, and I was here to learn more and possibly discuss the Z40-23 case, and it was on the consent agenda.
Yes, that item on the consent agenda was moved to our committee of the whole meeting in January as described in the agenda.
Okay, so our next opportunity to discuss that particular case will be in January.
At the January 28th committee of the whole meeting.
Okay.
25, excuse me, the January 25th committee of the whole meeting, not the full planning commission.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you. And there's additional information about that will be on the city website and then on the board docs as well about the location and time. Thank you. Then in that case, bring any other further public comment?
I do have one, if it seems like now would be a good time
Sure.
to insert that.
And I wanted to thank our speaker, Mr. Huang, and for his comments previously at previous committee meetings. I would recommend that for the answers to, those are all good questions that we have asked over the course of the last 8 months. And at all of those committee meetings, I would suggest that for the answers to those questions, just refer back to the staff materials, especially about the engagement that's taken place over a number of years, all the different levels. That's been a hot topic of much interest at the commission and at the public. And there are answers to all of that in our materials from these meetings in the past. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, so during the course of reviewing all of the requests to change the rezoning that we received from the public, we did, so as Chair Mueller mentioned, the committee did vote on everyone. This is the snapshot of some of the middle stations, and you did receive this request from Ms. Johnson to basically not rezone her block. And the reasoning that the committee had been working from was requests for changes from someone other than a property owner, generally from you all received no support. So that's what you did here. I have since spoken to Ms. Johnson, and so she would like to be considered to be removed on her own. So this, I did not get to speak to her in time to have this in your backup, so this is brand new to you. So I apologize for the surprise. But since you did vote, as you in the bottom of this, they recommended to not accept this request, she would like you to consider just her own request to be removed from rezoning. So I believe if you want to, you can vote on this. I will add, if you do, I will add it to the list that goes to council as part of your certified recommendation. So it will be, M14 as I labeled it. So just giving you the opportunity, should you wish to revisit Ms. Johnson and her property independently.
Thank you. Mr. York, did you have a comment?
No.
Oh, okay. You're touching your mic. I wasn't sure. We can address this item back at the table. As a refresher, at the committee of the whole, every time we would review any of these cases where a residential parcel was asking to be removed from the TOD and the requesting party was the property owner, him or herself, those were criteria that the committee deemed were important to consider and in general accepted all of such requests. Are there any comments about this new additional citizen request? Then in that case, I'd entertain a vote. We don't need to make a motion. By show of hands, who here would be in favor of recommending approval of the request to remove Ms. Johnson's parcel from the TOD? Are there any opposed? That vote is 7-0. So if
Thank
you
you.
could add
And she
that.
appreciates you.
Yes.
Okay, that was it for me.
Okay.
Unless you had other questions.
That's it.
And I did want to just. Yeah, put that slide up there.
Thank you. Would you like to, after we make this motion, would you like to review the next steps with us?
Sure.
Okay, or maybe we may.
Oh, yeah. So City Council has already scheduled the public hearing for both of these items to open on January the 30th in a special meeting. They, to my understanding, will be the only two items on the agenda. And so mailed notice and posted notice will begin in January. Legally, I can't do that until January. The way I've worked it, there will be 4 different versions of the letter that go out, depending on how you have been involved in the case. So that will be happening. And then on the 11th and the 18th, which are both Thursdays, there will be our office hours, our Ask a Planner sessions where staff will be available in person in Tower Road Community Center. Should anyone have questions that they want to ask in person and not on the phone or via email.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Commissioner McCrone.
Is it possible to provide acts or planner days on the weekends to provide time for those who are working?
I could schedule an extra one.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments? And Ira, could you clarify the type of notice that will be provided based on how our votes to the citizen requests to the rezoning cases will affect that?
Yep. So when we did mailed notice for the Planning Commission, there were two versions. There was the you are a property owner or a tenant whose property is included in the rezoning. And then there is a version for everyone who lives within 500 feet of the outer boundary. That's per the UDO. So in this version, the letters we determined were those two still. So you are your own property that's included in the rezoning request. You have submitted a change to the rezoning request, M1, M2, what have you, and here's what Planning Commission said about that. You live next to someone who requested a change, M1, M2, and here's more information about that. Or you just live within a close enough distance. So I think a lot of the votes on the individual requests were made with the understanding that we would be doing that additional notice and that potentially additional discussion would happen during the time of public hearing. So that was sort of the four versions to be as most clear to as many number of people as to what's happening and what may have changed and what Planning Commission is recommending as I could get to.
Thank you very much. Before we make any motions, are there any further discussion topics on either the rezoning case or the comp plan amendment or any other aspect of these cases? Then, seeing none, we can start with the comp plan amendment. I would like to entertain a motion with respect to CP 722.
Chair Miller, I will recommend approval of the draft resolution CP 722 to council based on staff's comments to PC comments. It allows more options for housing and employment along New Bern. It reduces reliance on car traffic, reduced emissions, healthier environment. It provides for a healthier environment, supports the story of Black Raleigh along the corridor, improves safety and added access for pedestrians and cyclists, and addresses conflicts with other overlay districts.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Otwell has seconded. Are there any further discussion or debates on the merits of the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? That motion passes unanimously 7-0. Moving on to rezoning case Z9222, I would like to entertain a motion.
Chair Miller, I have a comment to make. I have a prepared statement, and then
Yes.
I would imagine we'll have other prepared statements, and I'm prepared to make a motion after that.
Great, thank you. I will entertain any discussion or statements with respect to this rezoning case before we make a motion.
So I apologize for reading from the prepared statement. It'll sound a little wooden, but there's too much to cover from memory. All right, I'm in support of this rezoning. Numerous studies have shown that BRT without appropriate density is likely to fail as a viable transportation mode and is perceived poorly by the surrounding communities. Raleigh is committed to making BRT work. This rezoning is one of many important measures necessary to realize that vision. Neighborhoods around the New Bern corridor are rapidly gentrifying, and many of our residents are being displaced. Doing nothing will produce the most inequitable outcome. Significant investment in the impacted communities by the city will be required to prevent displacement regardless of this rezoning request, and the city has already made good progress in this area. Postponing this process to a later date after new studies yet to be designed or funded and wait till they have been completed could mean years of inaction while gentrification continues unchecked. This land use change will require monitoring and adjustment by City Council on an ongoing basis to ensure equitable outcomes. Changes to this decision should be made as we continue to study and monitor its impact, but we can't afford to wait to take action. The TOD bonus is the only chance for any significant amount of market rate affordable housing construction in the area. Negotiating affordable housing conditions one zoning at a time would result in an unsustainably low-density corridor and a much smaller amount of affordable housing, threatening the integrity of the BRT project and maximizing gentrification and displacement. Increased housing allowed by this rezoning will reduce market pressure on surrounding neighborhoods and slow gentrification. UNC's School of Economics has demonstrated that in local markets, upzoning doesn't impact the value of adjacent properties. Chain migration will create more availability in lower cost neighborhoods citywide, reducing displacement and helping affordability citywide. That ends my statement, and I'm prepared to make a motion after discussion is finished.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional statements that any commissioners would like to make prior to a motion? Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
Yeah, so first I want to thank staff, and especially Ira. I know you put so much work into this, and this is a long process for you all. I'm personally really excited about the BRT going to New Bern Avenue. I live right off New Bern Avenue, so I'm excited about having better public transportation options. I think it requires a lot of special care, this our area of Raleigh. It's the heart of Raleigh's black community. It's historically one of the most working class parts of Raleigh, very historic part of Raleigh. I think it's very susceptible to further gentrification and displacement beyond what's already happened here that we've seen from a lot of the great stuff staff put together recently. This corridor does already see heavy public transit ridership, although that has gone down in the last 5 years. And I think the work staff put into looking at median incomes and white versus black populations and how that's changed in this corridor in the last 10 years is really important. At the same time, I think, Raleigh's UDO and comp plan really lack a way to, encourage significant amounts of affordable housing, the kind of which is outlined in our action plan and consolidated plan. And I think our comp plan and UDO also lack ways to prevent displacement. And I think one of the things we're trying to do right now is do these overlays, which will increase density in these corridors, while we simultaneously lack a way to stop the negative impacts of that. And we're identifying those negative impacts and saying, hey, this could happen, but we don't have the tools yet, I don't think, here in Raleigh to stop those. So I do plan to vote against Z9222, and I do think rezoning processes and careful processes that put in special detail on a plot-by-plot basis in an area like this are really important. And yeah, I've made a lot of comments throughout these committee of the whole, so I'm not going to repeat myself at all of them. But I do still think, despite the incredible effort y'all have put into engagement, I do think there are still a lot of people, particularly the most vulnerable people in this corridor, that probably do not know this is happening. Now, it's never going to be perfect. I do acknowledge that. But for that and many other reasons, I do plan to vote against this. And, I think the fact that this is a frequent transit area already, and a lot of this area is also currently mixed-use zoning, we can get a significant amount of density through this corridor at the current time. Now, obviously, with the market being the way it is right now, it will be slow to develop no matter what we do. But I don't feel that this TOD will significantly increase the development that will help the BRT just on its own. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. Again, I'm reading from mine too, so don't feel bad that you were reading. I want to acknowledge my appreciation again to staff for the tremendous work that has gone into this. And I know I've expressed lots of concerns, asked lots of questions, been critical of some things, and I appreciate the professionalism and the graciousness with which you responded. We're both planners here, so it's certainly not any type of indictment of your professionalism or your competency. Sometimes we just have a professional disagreement, but I do appreciate how you have handled this case. I want to also say this because I have heard and read that if we don't support this rezoning or the TOD, that we don't support the BRT. And that's simply not true, at least for me. I do support BRT. I recognize the benefits that can come from a successful BRT system. I understand that certain densities are necessary for successful transit. But I want to be clear that I support communities and I support equitable development. And I don't mind being perceived as not supporting BRT if I think it's going to lead to inequitable development. I support preservation and production of affordable housing. I support livable, resilient, safe, and equitable communities. My comments and my concerns have nothing to do with my support for the BRT system. I support the BRT, but I have concerns about this rezoning. Before I get into my specific concerns, I want to say what has remained in the back of my mind throughout this entire, I guess it's been 8 months that we've been talking about this, much longer that the city has been having the conversation, is that, years ago, over 50 plus years ago, people sat at tables like these, making decisions that they said were in the best interest of Black communities. Here we sit 50 plus years later, trying to undo the damage from those decisions that were made in the best interest of the Black community. The problem is the people making the decisions often aren't members of the Black community. This has been, I believe in my heart, this is a well-intentioned initiative on the city's part. When you say to me, this supports the story of these Black communities along New Bern Avenue, when you say you want to improve conditions along New Bern Avenue, you want to enhance safety, you want to improve economic development, I believe you. I believe you mean that. But I don't want people sitting at a table like this 50 years from now trying to undo the damage that was done in the best interest of people who aren't at the table helping to co-create the plan. When those communities are gone, as many of them are today, as we read about in Ms. Carmen Cawthon's book, Historic Black Communities of Raleigh, when they're gone, they're gone. We have plaques, we have books, we have displays at museums, but the communities are gone. The people are gone. I'm not prepared to vote in support of a rezoning of 744 parcels, 726 acres in the heart of the Black community without a better understanding of what the impacts of that rezoning is going to be. And despite all of the tremendous information that has been provided to us by staff, and I do appreciate it, and I've done a lot of research on my own, and I've talked to a lot of people across the country, in Raleigh and across the country, and I am not comfortable that we have done enough study to understand how this is going to impact the most vulnerable parts of New Bern Avenue, the most vulnerable parts. We have a lot of policies in that comp plan amendment that we just approved to address neighborhood stabilization, to address displacement, and I really appreciate those policies, I do. But I think they need to be more specific. I think they need to be more targeted. I think we need to do a study so we can understand the parts of that corridor that are most susceptible to displacement, and we can target specific, measurable actions for those areas before we approve such a massive upzoning. One of the things that gives me heartburn is that we're doing this simultaneously. And I don't think it gives the policies meant to stabilize the areas a chance to do that. Because certain things are going to happen once this rezoning, if this rezoning is approved, certain things are going to automatically happen. We know this. We don't know the specific impact on property tax values. And I know there are studies that suggest there's no effect. There are studies that say there is an effect. We don't know, but we know something is going to happen. We can just look around and see what's already happening. And I'm not comfortable with such a massive rezoning in an historically black part of the city without knowing, or at least having an idea of the impact on that black community. I will also say, and I had typed up my comments and I haven't even looked at them. I'm just going, I'm just coming straight from my heart. It's one of the reasons I became a planner, one of the reasons I appreciate sitting on this commission is because I get an opportunity to affect policy. I get an opportunity to be a voice for people who look like me. I get an opportunity to try to make things better, to try to repair harm that has been done in communities filled with people who look like me. And so that's why sometimes I speak with so much emotion, because this is very personal for me. And I don't want to, I've made some decisions, I voted some ways, and I question it. When it's this big and this significant, I want to try to do what my conscience tells me is right. I'm also a professional planner, so I mean, I'm using planning principles as well, but at the end of the day, I go with what my conscience tells me. And something that I've observed while, just in general, but also while sitting at this table, is these massive, massive rezonings. We had another one, whose name I won't call, but you know, that came before us. We have these big rezonings. They're always in or adjacent to black communities, always. We're trying to fix these black communities because we messed them up, because we created the policies, we disinvested in them, we built highways through them, we built transit through them, supposedly to help them, and now here we are trying to fix them. How about we don't continue to do these policies and actions that harm them in the first place? So I share Mr. Wong's concern about engagement. This is not a criticism on the part of the city that you did not do enough engagement activities. I know you did. I've seen the list. I'm not critical of the activities that you did. I appreciate the activities that you did. But we are learning that we just have to engage people in different ways in order to reach some of those out on the margins. And we know there are people along this corridor on the margins. And we have heard that many of them haven't been engaged in the process. We have heard that some don't know about the process. So I am concerned about the engagement. I mentioned I'm concerned about the lack of an understanding of what the impacts will be. I'm concerned about the lack of any type of equity metrics. I understand that the rezoning is just one tool in the massive toolbox necessary to achieve truly equitable engagement. I know there are other departments involved that will be responsible for different aspects of making this work. But while it will take multiple tools and multiple partners to make this successful, this one tool alone can destroy what took multiple generations to build. This one tool alone can tear apart communities that formed in response to other land use policies that dictated that they couldn't locate in other parts of the city, so they had to locate along New Bern Avenue in the first place. So we need to be very sure that we aren't now coming into New Bern Avenue where these communities formed because they couldn't locate elsewhere in the city. We need to be sure that we aren't coming in there to disrupt, dismantle, and displace them again. I fully recognize that there are some challenges along the corridor. I don't turn a blind eye to that, as I'm sure the residents don't. I'm fully supportive of building upon the strengths of these communities and helping them address their challenges. I worry that we might be so focused on the BRT being successful that we may have lost sight of the residents who live and work there being successful. The BRT is coming, we know that. We already saw the groundbreaking. It's going to happen whether or not we approve this rezoning right now. I just want to make sure we get it right so the neighborhoods along the corridor can continue to exist and not merely be commemorated with plaques and in history books. For these reasons, I am unable to support Z9222. I would like to see additional study done about the potential impacts and mitigation before such a massive rezoning is approved. I'd like to see further examination of the TOD density bonus to make sure we are doing our best to incentivize development of affordable housing and not simply encouraging more high-rise luxury apartments. Ideally, I'd like to see the comp plan updated with a specific equity focus, but I know that will not happen before this decision is made. Perhaps council could consider taking time to do a displacement study, even if they have to do it corridor by corridor, with the result being specific measurable strategies to help keep legacy residents in their homes so they too can enjoy the benefits of improved mobility and access. I know a delay is not desirable, but we delayed the rezoning to revise the TOD policy to remove the prohibition on single-family homes and duplexes, so I know it's possible. For those reasons, I'm unable to support this rezoning. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Bennett. Are there any other additional comments at the table or statements that anyone wishes to make prior to making a motion? Commissioner Lampman.
Just to offer that those comments are deep and that there's a lot of work that went into this as well, and that there's a lot of, I think, really great opportunity that can come out of all of this to help support some of the needs of the Black community and help provide that preservation and that stability that we need. So regardless, I think that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity that can come out of this whole process. So thank you for everyone's work, and thank you for my peers as well, because this was a lot of work on everybody's behalf as well.
Thank you very much. I don't have any prepared comments to this. I'm struck and moved by the comments that were prepared, and thank everyone for their thoughts and for involving their conscience, and I would ask everyone vote their conscience on this case. I will say the displacement studies and creating metrics around the outcomes and impacts in these corridors, I would completely support that. I think that is critical, that you share a number of the concerns that I have had. I am concerned about the impact of the rezoning on each of those items. I'm also concerned about the impact of not rezoning on each of those items. Now that the BRT is coming through this area, it is going to change regardless whether we do this rezoning or not. And I'm deeply concerned about the outcome either way. So I think I would absolutely, regardless of the vote here on the rezoning, would support a displacement study. Even if the answer is no, I still want to have better metrics around displacement in these corridors. If that is something that we could recommend, is that a separate motion that we might be able to recommend to council?
Yeah, it would have to be a second.
It'd have to be a separate motion, okay. And I don't have all of the exact details of the metrics and the outline of those types of studies. I was trying to take notes as quickly as I could, but I might defer to Commissioner Bennett on that. Are there any other additional comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I would like to entertain a motion. Yes.
I'll make a motion. First, let me comment that Commissioner Bennett, I hear you and I share your concerns. I think that the only place that we differ is that my fear that doing nothing will have a worse impact. And so I fully encourage council and this committee, this commission, to continue to pursue this and keep an eye on this. It's regardless of what we do, it's going to take a lot of work to make it land right. And so I move to recommend, Mr. York, I'm going off script here, so heads up. I move to recommend adoption of Z9222. This motion references and includes all amendments noted in the consistency statement contained in the agenda materials dated December 12th, 2023, as well as all amendments made today. Approval of this rezoning is in the public interest and is needed to support our transit vision. It is a positive step in addressing gentrification and protecting affordable housing. City Council has made significant strides in implementing actions and policies laid out in Raleigh's Equitable Development Around Transit Guidebook, including an unprecedented outreach effort and the dedication of significant funding for directly subsidized affordable housing. I caution City Council that continued monitoring, outreach, increased investment, and good faith are required to protect communities impacted by this rezoning. I endorse the policies identified by staff as consistent with the comprehensive plan in the prepared consistency statement, and I find the following policies of particular relevance. I'm not going to read the numbers, I'll just read the titles. Mixed income neighborhoods, housing diversity, affordable units and TODs, encouraging pedestrian-oriented uses, transit-oriented development, capitalizing on transit access, station area land uses, corridor development, and mixed-use redevelopment. This request conforms to the principles and actions contained in Raleigh's Equitable Development Around Transit Guidebook, especially the following sections. Design principles encourage mix of uses and concentrate density around transit, station area type application, and zoning tools. So moved.
Thank you.
If you could add adoption of the consistency statement. You said you endorsed, but the motion needs to include an adoption of the consistency statement.
And I recommend adoption of the consistency statement as well.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any further discussion or debates on the merits of the motion? I would like to add before I vote, I will vote in favor of this rezoning case, and for the same reasons, out of concern of a lack of, out of concern for displacement of the folks living in this neighborhood. I'm concerned if we don't rezone that the single-family plots could get turned into large single-family homes, and that the rezonings could increase both market rate affordable housing and density, and the subsidized affordable housing as well, or can take in with this bonus. So thank you. Any other comments before we vote?
Yeah, I mean, I just do want to politely counter to that even when we rezone, if we give a 12-story mixed-use zoning or a 40-story mixed-use zoning, someone can still build a single-family home there. So doing a 744-plot rezoning will not take away that danger any more than not doing it. Most of the multifamily in Raleigh has been done by individual rezonings, and I don't think we lose that ability to densify this. And I just want to make this point before we vote, because I have heard in a couple people's comments that people can still put luxury single-family zoning in this corridor, whether we approve this or whether council approves this or not. And developers can still come forward to ask for individual rezonings to build more dense buildings. We do not end that possibility today by not approving the New Bern TOD. So just wanted to reemphasize that.
Thank you. That is acknowledged that we're not eliminating that possibility, just I'm really commenting on the economic realities of what happens when we upzone parcels, which is to allow more market rate dense and affordable housing. So that's the reason for my vote. But yes, Commissioner Bennett.
And I was just going to add that my lack of support of the rezoning isn't that I don't ever want it to happen. It's just that I don't think it needs to happen right now. I think there are things that need to happen before, before this rezoning takes place.
Thank you. Commissioner Layman.
And agreed
very
statement as well that I don't think that, you know, a no vote is in direct opposition to all the work that's been done and the vision, but I think that there could be a redesign or a framing of some sort with additional information.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debates on the merits of the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? That motion fails. 3-2-4. I will entertain another motion.
I wasn't expecting that. I'm going to read it. I can't do like you did. So I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated December 12th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend denial of the zoning amendment. After considering the policies, maps, and other materials included as a part of the comprehensive plan, the Planning Commission determines that the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans and consistent with the future land use map, but the request should be denied. The action taken is reasonable and in the public interest because applying the TOD to certain properties would result in some existing uses becoming nonconforming. If a property is considered a nonconformity, I'm not going to, wait a minute, hold on. Let me take a minute, because I hadn't read this before, so.
You're welcome to say whatever you like.
Yeah.
The consistency statement is there to help you, not to
Yes,
require
I
you to.
appreciate that. I'm going to start again and say, I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated December 12th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend denial of the zoning amendment. How about I leave it at that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Reeves has seconded. Any further discussion or debates on the merits of the motion? Seeing none, I will, all those in favor of the motion? By show of hands. And those opposed? That motion passes 4-3. Are there any other items we need to discuss about this case?
No, I will remind you that you had just mentioned you might want to recommend council do, number one, a text change about the TOD neighborhood transition, and then you just said at the table potentially some other study about displacement.
Yes.
So if you still wish to do either of those things together or on their own, you could do that, but that was not included in what just happened.
Thank you. And I wanted to, I'm sorry, I was taking notes quickly and I may have missed. Commissioner Bennett, did you include in your motion the reason, the request for an additional study before approving this case, or that was just more in your comments beforehand, not in the actual motion? Okay. I didn't know if that was included as the reason, as part
I
of the
didn't
reasoning behind
include
your
it in the motion for denial because I thought Mr. York said that needed to be a separate
Yeah.
motion,
I see.
right? Didn't you say that?
Yeah, all the recommendations that council consider, other studies, or should be separate motions. You don't have to do them today. If you want to
Could
think
we-
about them and discuss them, you can do that any time. Yes.
The reason for my no vote was because I want to move on getting the study done first
Okay.
before I can, with a good conscience, vote in support of this. We need to know what's going to happen because as a homeowner in this community, I need to know what's going to happen to my community.
Right.
So I want to move, or I don't have the correct words in front of me, move that we vote on this motion. Commissioner Bennett, if you would give us the right terminology.
So just to clarify, in the motion to deny, is there a way to include the reasoning within that motion?
We're asking that be a separate motion. If you're going to ask for a study or you're going to ask for an additional text change, we're asking that you put that in a separate motion,
Yes.
separate from the recommendation for denial.
Yes, so, but I was just saying, as clarification, just potentially helpful to council,
Yeah.
saying we recommend denial because there hasn't been a study, and then in addition, we make a motion for a study. So that.
Well, so this is reasonable in the public interest to deny because whatever, we do not
first need a study.
understand, et cetera. and then later you say, we recommend that you study the thing. So the motion itself should not recommend that council do something,
Right.
but it can explain why you think what you're doing is reasonable in the public interest. So the templates we provide in the staff report are from the staff report, but whatever planning commission says becomes what planning commission says. So in my bullet point talked about nonconformity, if whoever makes the motion to deny said, denial is reasonable because this rezoning will do X, Y, or Z, and then later you say, now council should do something about that. I think that's the point that Mr. York is trying to make, that your motion shouldn't tell council what to do for anything other than Z9292, but you can certainly explain your reason for denial or approval if it's different from what we've provided, as in the template.
Thank you.
So do we need to redo the motion with the reasons why?
Do I make a motion to reconsider? Or do we just need to change the reason, or amend?
You can add,
Friendly amendment?
you can add in commentary to your reasons for supporting the motion to deny. Right now, as it reads, the reasonableness of denial are what was listed in the consistency statement, okay? But even when you guys approve something, when the commission approves something and by split vote, staff will often ask those who voted against approval to give their reasoning because council asked for it. So I think it's fine to supplement. It's not going to be part of the consistency statement that was adopted unless you do a motion to reconsider, but you can add reasons why you voted the way you did.
That will make it into the minutes that they receive.
Correct.
Yes, okay,
And they're going to ask at the table,
they will,
why, why?
yes.
I mean, when any one of you votes differently than the rest of you, the council asks why, asks me and Chair Miller when they receive your report why. So, and they're going to ask about this. And you've all made statements this morning about why you are voting the way you are.
Okay, so I think we're covered. Thank you. Yes,
And I will send my statement to Shanita it can
Thank
be
you.
attached to the minutes.
I was trying to take notes for everyone's as quickly as I
Like,
could.
you could do the same? So
Thank you.
we're good.
Yes, so I think that we're all set. Would anyone like to make a motion to recommend to council a study or text for,
Well, it was to authorize a text change about neighborhood transitions in the TOD. That was from the committee discussion.
we'll start with that one, to authorize a text change, to authorize that text change.
Sure, Chairman, I'll be happy to do that. So I recommend a motion to City Council that they should authorize a text change to review how neighborhood transition standards are applied within this TOD.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Can I ask, are we doing multiple motions here or just one? Okay, so
This will be our third.
anything about displacement will be in a separate motion.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
The wording of the motion references this TOD. Is it just specific to the New Bern TOD, or is it all TODs that get applied from the city here on out?
It's a good question. I'm referring specifically to Z9222.
Thank you. Yes.
Could we apply them to all of our TODs?
Text change would be a whole lot easier if it's applicable to all TODs, because what you were talking about doing earlier in your discussion was revising the rules for the TOD as it dealt with transition.
So could we apply it to all TODs?
Thank you. And staff, the way that's you worded it now is to authorize a text change to review how neighborhood transitions might apply to all TODs. So I think given that flexibility that staff has there, that probably makes sense.
Right. May I?
Yeah, yes.
I feel like we had discussions at the committee meetings about a few concerns with the TOD policy. So I'm not opposed, wait, what am I trying to say? I'm not opposed to this particular motion. But it just seems like what we really wanted was a reexamination of the TOD. I mean, it seems like there might be multiple things that we want council to look at and consider revising. So are we going to do like every little thing? Because I know we had a lot of conversation about heights. We had a lot of conversations about the density bonus. So perhaps what we want to do is have council just allow us or staff to take a look at the TOD policy as a whole, and there might be more than just this particular text change that would come from that.
That was going to be, that's why I asked that question about if we were doing multiple motions, because that was going to be what I wanted to add specifically, that.
Thank you.
I would add, if you don't have, right now, the motion is to authorize a text change or authorize a study?
Text change.
It
And
says
the
text change, but then it says to review. So it sounds more like a study than a text change.
Yeah.
Read the wording, doesn't it say a text change to review?
No, to provide a text change you're correct, Commissioner Bennett, to review how transition standards are set.
So that
But that would
sounds
be
more like
through
a
the text
study,
change committee.
doesn't it? Okay.
So, but normally there's a specific change you're wanting, and what you're talking about is you're not sure what the change should be yet.
Right.
So that would be a study before a text change. So if you want to expand the motion to include other aspects of TOD, you can do it in one motion. If you want to break it up, you can break it up. But you're not asking really for a text change. You're asking for a study that could lead to a text change. Does that make sense? Because you don't have the specifics of what you're wanting to change.
That's correct.
Okay. That would be requesting that they put that issue before you so you can study it.
So I need to rephrase.
Wouldn't we need to withdraw since we have the question on the table that's been seconded?
Yeah, we do. Did you get a second? Yeah.
Yes, I
You
seconded it.
yeah.
It was seconded. So
Does he withdraw the motion? Or
you can withdraw and start over.
I would like to withdraw the original motion for this text change authorization study and restate a new motion to request that City Council authorize a study for a text change to allow Planning Commission to review how neighborhood transition standards are applied within all TODs.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Are there any other motions on the table with respect to improving transit overlay districts in the city?
Sorry, I don't have mine pre-written, so bear with me here, but I'd like to motion to, should I be authorizing council to do this? Is that what I want to
Motion
ask?
to ask city council to authorize a study to improve,
Asking city council to authorize a study.
Yes.
To comprehensively look at heights within the New Bern BRT corridor, and to also study, how do I want to say this? To also look into density bonuses, their effectiveness, and how they can be effective here in this corridor. Sorry, here in Raleigh within our TODs. And to make sure I'm capturing all of this. And also to study the definition of a TOD in general within our UDO. That's really complicated. I could have done that more succinctly.
and just to clarify, the first part of your motion is to ask city council to authorize a study to look at heights within just the New Bern corridor specifically with respect to density bonuses, or with all?
No, yeah, throughout the
Okay,
TOD.
so
yeah,
removing that
simplifying
limitation on studying the New Bern corridor.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, because I would think that this would be covered in the first motion for for the TOD text change. Those particular items that you just,
Not necessarily.
so it almost sounds like a friendly amendment or
Well, I thought
in
the
addition
first
to.
one, sorry, I thought the first one was just a motion for neighborhood transitions. So this would be with specific regard to the density
And
bonus
don't-
and the definition of a TOD in our comp plan.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Could you clarify what you mean about the definition of a TOD?
Well, so the way a TOD is outlined in the comp plan, and then for within this particular Z92 case, right, there were variances on that, on those heights beyond what a normal TOD is. So I think what I want council to look into is, why we're putting certain heights where and what will be effective where and what will get us, what will encourage the density bonus to be used and not used, basically. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just say, this is why I said I think what we're really asking is for council to look at the TOD policy, period. I mean, we're picking out all these little pieces, but in effect, we're asking them to authorize a study,
Right.
a reexamination of the policy.
Yes.
I mean, it's not terrible to identify the key areas that hooked us, though, so I think that that's all fine as well. I'll offer a second.
So thank you. And if I may clarify the outlines of the study, so this is a motion, if I'm getting wrong, let me know. A motion to ask City Council to authorize a study that reviews the heights and density bonuses within the TOD with a goal towards increasing their effectiveness at resulting in additional affordable housing.
Definitely.
Thank you. And with that
Thank you.
motion.
Thank you for helping me with that.
You're welcome.
I should have had that pre-written, but I just wasn't expecting to need it, so thank you.
Yes.
And this addresses the TOD policy that you're speaking to as well, correct, Nicole? I mean, the definition of the TOD, to review that policy.
Yeah, if that language is in there, the definition, then I guess, yeah, it does.
Okay,
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Laitman has seconded. Any further discussion? Oh, yeah.
I think that staff has studied the issues that we're asking them to study here already. They've put extensive effort into studying how affordable housing bonuses work, and they've spent years working on the heights and tweaking this TOD, and council took an extensive look before they passed the original TOD. I don't think we can afford the time to start over from scratch with redefining TODs and beginning this process from the start all over again. I can't support this.
Thank you very much. I'll also add that the issue of finding the effectiveness at creating affordable housing incentives is something that is very much studied at this city council level, and that the hands are largely tied based on state statute, and the city has worked hard for a long time on figuring out what tools that we can use and will be effective for, again, both market rate affordable housing and otherwise. So I think that work is being done, and I was ready to vote for that motion, but to Commissioner Otwell's point, I think it is studied extensively, and dedicating additional government resources, taxpayer dollars to add to those specific studies, I'm not sure raises to the level of priority for me that some of these other motions and studies do. So I think for that reason, I'll deny as well.
Those are fair comments.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I appreciate that, and I'm not doing this to waste anyone's time. And I do believe that staff in the city planning and housing department has put a ton of effort into that, and I know Raleigh has studied that more than a lot of places. I think my reason for wanting to do that is just seeing, as we heard multiple times during these committee meetings, how it has not been used yet in Raleigh, and also in hearing more about construction and the way things are made. It was hard for me to see where it would be used if we'd passed this Z9222. And I think as we move forward, knowing a way it can be drawn up so that it would be used, because it seems to have not been yet, I think is really important. So yeah, that's my reasoning for it. I'm not making this motion to suggest that we haven't spent any time on it for sure.
Any other comments or questions on the or debate on the merits of the motion? Yep.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think it's, I don't think it's time wasted or resources wasted. I certainly am aware that a lot of time and effort have been put into it, and it has been studied. But I will say that there are places that are doing things that Raleigh is not doing within North Carolina. So I know there are areas where we can possibly do more than we are doing. So I don't think it's wasted effort. If we are helping communities, if we are helping to advance the cause of equity, it's certainly not wasted effort, because we have absolutely spent many, many, many resources on policies that have harmed communities. So I'm not at all concerned with expending resources on policies that might help communities.
Well put. Could staff weigh in on whether such a study has previously been performed?
Well, the design of the transit overlay district was the result of the height bonus in particular was the result of a market study, and the rest of the text change certainly went through the text change process. So I don't, will not tell you what, if this were authorized, exactly what the planning department would do to do a new thing, but it would likely be probably some version, looking at a new version of what we had done already. There may be potentially other things. I can't give you a scope of work right now for that at the podium, but yeah, the bonus itself was based on a market study that we contracted with an economic development professional.
Okay.
So could do that.
Thank
again,
you, Commissioner
I guess.
McCrone.
On the website, it said this was done in 2021. And so what will we be doing? How will we update this?
So the TOD was not applied anywhere in Raleigh to any property in Raleigh until last year. So it's only been in place for maybe 18 months at the most. I think it's premature for us to be seeing projects bringing forward development that uses the TOD. Even if you had site control the day that the TOD was applied, which you probably didn't, you would still have to move through the site design, site grading, all the permitting. I think it's too early for us to have seen projects utilizing the TOD. So that's why we're not seeing them yet, right? Like it just hasn't been around long enough for us to see development utilizing the overlay, the height bonus related to affordable housing.
So basically, we haven't given it an opportunity to actually be effective.
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Thank
We
you.
have had staff has had lots of conversations with property owners, potential buyers about their interest in using the overlay. We are hearing from the development community that they are interested in it, and we do expect uptake, but I think it's still too soon. And that's just in the western and southern corridor, and we're already hearing interest about the New Bern corridor.
Thank you. And is this something that council is asking staff to monitor and provide updates on?
Right, we talked about this very topic at the work session on the 14th of November, and the expectation on all sides is that staff will continue to monitor and evaluate. At that time, I indicated that this is like cooking bacon. You cannot look away. You have to watch vigilantly. Yep. This is not a set it and forget it situation. We are watching this very carefully.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, because I know my motion was complicated. I'm not making this motion with your help, with the intention of changing the actual density bonus. I want us as a city to look at how we can encourage it to be used, and the specific, the 20% of extra floors, that language. That's not what I think we need to be looking at, because I know y'all have studied that, and there's people across the country who come to those numbers. What I'm talking about is how we can as a city, set these overlays, set zoning to encourage it to be used. And I do think it's been, those terms for that density bonus, those apply elsewhere outside of the TOD, correct?
No, so the TOD is the only place where we have a bonus in the code. There is
Okay.
the frequent transit development option is an option that has some affordability language, but the bonus only exists in the overlay.
Okay. But the same terms of that bonus do exist in the FTDO if it's already in a mixed-use zone, isn't that correct?
We are seeing a lot of uptake with the FTDO. We've seen about 400 units in development already. About half of those are affordable because one of the projects is a low-income housing tax credit project. The whole thing's affordable.
Right.
What is that? I think that's Newbern Crossing. And then the other 3 projects have delivered somewhere between a dozen and 18, or are anticipated to deliver somewhere between a dozen and 18 affordable units. Those are private market delivered, unsubsidized, affordable units.
And those are FTDO.
Yeah, that's right.
So those are examples of places that use the density bonus with the FTDO.
Yeah. It's
So with
it's
respect
happening.
to this text change on the TOD, it looks like staff's already reviewing this, and council has already authorized for staff to continue to review the effectiveness of the TOD density bonuses. If we make a motion recommending that council do that, it sounds like there's no harm in that because they're doing it anyway. So in that case, since the study's already being performed, I will vote in favor of it. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of recommending council continue to study this topic? Those opposed? Okay, that motion passes 6-1. Thank you very much. And then I believe there might be one additional motion to ask council to authorize a study. Is that correct?
Yes, so I would like to move to request that City Council consider authorizing a displacement study. The study's primary purpose would be to identify areas most at risk for displacement and recommend policies and measurable actions to stabilize these areas and to prevent displacement. Policies could include actions related to inclusive development to the extent allowable by the General Assembly, neighborhood stabilization, affordable housing preservation, and economic development. Policies could also include requirements for development located in an area identified as high risk for displacement to include an impact assessment, mitigation strategy, and higher level of community engagement. Several cities have conducted displacement studies and recommended or implemented associated policies. These include Austin, Texas, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, California, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Seattle, Washington, and Boston, Massachusetts. By conducting this study now, we can ensure that our city's growth does not come at the expense of our most vulnerable and most diverse communities. This proactive approach will not only help to protect our communities, but also contribute to a more equitable and sustainable development process.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Lampman has seconded. Any further discussion or debates? And by show of hands, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Are there any additional motions with respect to the New Bern Area Planning Study or Transit Overlay Districts? Then, seeing none, we'll move on to new business.
So before I leave the
Yes.
podium, probably for the last time, I will say, for all the time we've spent together in this room, I know most or all of you have spent an equal amount of time on your own time at home doing things, and sometimes talking to me, sometimes not. So I do want to thank you while we're thanking each other and say we appreciate your service. You know, as a planning professional and a resident of Raleigh, I think you made a better product. So
Thank you, Ira.
Thank you,
Thank
Ira.
you. Appreciate you.
I want to say a big thank you to Ira as well. He transitioned to another role within the city more than a year ago and has stayed with us to see this process through to the end. So probably the last time you'll see Ira at the podium on a rezoning case, because that's not his work anymore. But he's been a great staff case planner and has really been committed to a good process for this particular rezoning and for the CP7 that was the New Bern Station Area Plan. So thanks,
Thank you,
Ira.
Ira. It's been great working with you. Leaving on New Bern. What a mic drop. Okay, then moving on to our next item under new business. This case, moving on to new business. These requests have not appeared on a previous Planning Commission agenda or been heard under a previous Planning Commission agenda. So we will hear a full staff presentation, an applicant presentation, and we will hear from the public. The first case is listed in the agenda under committee reports as item D1. As I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, this case was referred to the committee of the whole due to a double inconsistency with the comp plan and the future land use map, but we were unable to hear this case in the committee due to timing constraints. As a result, this case was moved back to the full commission, and we will hear this case today. So this case is to allow a text change to zoning conditions on 10.5 on a 10.5 acre portion of 1421 Old Watkins Road. And we will turn to Matthew Burns for a presentation from City Planning staff.
Good morning, Planning Commission members. Matthew Burns with Planning and Development. The site at 1421 Old Watkins Road is in Raleigh's ETJ and would be a text change of zoning conditions. And the deadline for this request is February 21st, 2024. Zoning the area is primarily residential. The nearest compatible heavy industrial district is south of the site, fronting on Old Watkins Road, and is the site of Carolina Tree Debris, a yard waste disposal site. Adjacent parcels north and east are within Raleigh's corporate limits, and west and south are within Raleigh's ETJ. So there is an existing single-family dwelling as part of the parcel, but it's not located on this site. And the site's predominantly located near rural and low-scale residential uses, manufactured housing, and the industrial use that I mentioned on the last slide. The site has limited access to Old Watkins Road. Primary access is through Beagle Retreat Drive, a gravel road which just sits on an easement that crosses multiple properties. And the parcels to the north and east are, as I mentioned, within Raleigh's corporate limits and are part of an approved subdivision plan for a project by Lennar Homes. The area in red shown on screen, that's where the existing home is. Here are some views north, northwest, northeast, and northwest of the site. On the bottom left is that single-family home that I mentioned, and on the bottom right shows a gate that enters onto the subject property. And these are just a couple views of Beagle Retreat Drive. So the request would amend conditions pertaining to the site's heavy industrial conditional use zoning. It would remove landfill from the list of permitted uses, add outdoor storage for parking vehicles, boats, and RVs to the list of permitted uses, change buffer yard requirements from a minimum width of 100 feet to 20 feet, and change the allowed hours of operations to 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Conditions 4 and 5 are holdovers from the previous rezoning, which was in 2007. And these are just the conditions that were either changed or removed as part of the request. Upon approval, industrial entitlement on the site would increase, and the setback requirements are based on the general building type, which is the primary building allowed in heavy industrial zoning. Compared to citywide averages, the area of request is less pedestrian friendly and less bikeable, and has much lower job proximity than average. The site is not served by municipal or regional transit. As I mentioned, upon approval, industrial entitlement would increase, and although the request does not add to the housing supply or include subsidized units, please note that residential uses are not permitted in IH zoning districts. Area residents are less likely to be racial minorities and less likely to be low income compared to citywide averages, and the cost of rent has increased in the area at a slower rate than the city average. The request is inconsistent with the future land use map designation of rural residential. There is no urban form guidance on the site. And the request is inconsistent overall with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. Staff identified 6 major policies that are inconsistent, which are related to conditional use district consistency, zoning and infrastructure, and buffering requirements, as well as the location of industrial areas and industrial uses. There are no outstanding issues, and your deadline for action is February 21st, 2024. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Moving on to public comment with those in support. The applicant and those in favor will have a total of 10 minutes to speak, and I would ask the applicant and those that come up to speak introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is Mark Hurt. I'm one of the co-owners of this property. We feel like that with the landfill adjacent south and I guess it would be west of this property, and as it was already zoned to extend this landfill, we just feel that now is a good time to try to get some text changes to this and try to utilize the property for something that the neighbors in the area could use as their HOAs, and some of the ordinances doesn't allow them to park their boats and RVs and things in their yards. And this would be a great area that, I don't know if the pictures give it justice, the landfill there, but I wouldn't want to live next to this thing. It is probably 50 feet high at this time. You can't see this property that we're talking about text changing the to from the road. It probably 900 feet or so behind this landfill. So we feel like that this would be a great utilization of the property and something the community needs instead of parking the RVs and boats and what all commercial vehicles in their yards. Just our thoughts and thought it would be a great use of the land. Are there any questions?
Thank you. We may have some later, but
All right.
thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in support of this project? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment for those opposed. Any opposition to this case will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. And then seeing none, we'll bring it back to the table. Are there any comments and questions from the commissioners?
I have a
Yes, Commissioner Fox.
comment and also maybe a question for someone from the applicant team. Overall, I find this inconsistent. It's inconsistent with the future land use map and the comp plan because of its proximity to residential. However, I'm going to acknowledge in 2007 a landfill was allowed there, so this is in effect less intensive use in that sense. But the one piece that sticks out to me is reducing the buffer from 100 feet to 20 feet. I was wondering if we could get someone to address why that was necessary.
Yes, could the applicant address that question of a buffer? We may have additional questions for you too if you want to stay nearby. Thank you.
That suggestion came from planning staff, that the 100-foot buffer was for the landfill, and that the normal industrial, heavy industrial, is 20 feet. So we're just trying to utilize as much as we can of the property, of course. And that's why we took the landfill off the table, so that it wouldn't be a chance that it could come back and be less than 100 feet.
Thank you very much. Any follow-up questions with respect to the buffer for the applicant?
I do, Chair Miller. On the buffer, maybe it's more of a question for staff. Does the applicant need to apply a B1 or B2, is there something in the language we can be more specific? Because the way it reads now, it seems like it's just what's there is the buffer, and I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, per the UDO, buffers are required between industrial and residential districts, and in the form of either a type B1 or B2 transitional protective yard. So it would be required for development of the site.
So the way the condition reads now, it would cover that?
It would.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion. Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated December 12th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment. This recommendation also includes an amendment to the 2030 comprehensive plan and the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Otwell has seconded. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Yes. 8. Or 8, excuse me. Commissioner Fox is back. Welcome back. Moving on to the next item under new business, agenda item E1, Z3323 at 3206 Old Buffalo Road. Before I begin, are there any commissioners who have any recusals on this case? Nope, maybe it's the next one? I see. Yes, okay. Then moving on to this case, this rezoning is to change approximately 1.58 acres from R6 to commercial mixed use 3 stories. And we will now turn to Bronwyn Reedus for a presentation from city planning staff.
Thank you. Bronwyn Reedus, Planning and Development. So yes, the request is to rezone approximately 1.5 acres from R6 to commercial mixed use 3 stories. Your deadline for action is February 10th. So this site is located just a few hundred feet east of Capitol Boulevard, or US 1, as you can see on this map. Zoning in the area is mixed use. So along Capitol Boulevard, there's a mix of commercial mixed use and industrial mixed use zoning. And then you also have residential zoning as you move farther away from that Capitol Boulevard corridor. Here's a look at the existing development around the site. You can see the existing development follows that zoning map pretty well. So you have commercial and industrial developments along the Capitol Boulevard corridor. And then as you move out on either side, some residential. So on the western side, moderate scale residential. On the eastern side, where the site is located, it does move pretty quickly to lower density residential. Here's another closer look at the site. Just wanted to point out the site adjacent to the west, that's an auto zone, and then adjacent to the east, that's an existing or 2 existing single-family homes. Here's a look at the site from Buffalo Road. You can see there is 1 existing single-family home today, and the site is pretty heavily wooded, a pretty suburban feel frontage there today. Here's a look at the estimated change in entitlement going from R6 to commercial mixed use 3 stories. Estimated maximum units of 81, and then of course you incorporate the addition of commercial uses, office, and retail. The request scores higher than the citywide average on all of our transportation and energy indicators. It's pretty close to transit. It's scoring higher on walkability and bikeability, lower cost of transportation in general, and that's because it is located in that pretty built-out Capitol Boulevard corridor. Here's a look at the closest bus stop. It is the 15L, the Traywick connector. It's just about 500 feet west along Capitol Boulevard. The request adds to the housing supply and checks a lot of the boxes for the affordability analysis because it allows for smaller units, different kinds of housing in close proximity to existing transit access and planned transit access. However, it doesn't include any subsidized units. This area has a higher percentage of people of color than the citywide average. It has an equal amount of lower incomes to the citywide average. And then rents are increasing pretty quickly in this area, though slightly slower than the citywide average, 22% versus the citywide average of 25.5%. So the future land use map designation for this site is office and residential mixed use. That is, the requested district of commercial mixed use 3 stories is inconsistent with that future land use designation. That designation wants office and residential uses. Commercial mixed use allows for pretty much the full breadth of commercial uses. And then the urban form map does put this site in a frequent transit area, which means that it'll have future transit access with 15-minute increments of service. No frontage has been requested, so that is coming up as inconsistent with the urban form map, and urban frontage would be recommended by the comprehensive plan to promote pedestrian promoted design and walkability. So although the request is inconsistent with the future land use map and the urban form map, it's coming up consistent overall with the comprehensive plan. There's a number of consistent policies highlighted here. Because it is so close to transit access and job opportunities, it does support increasing development intensity. There are some inconsistent policies here. So again, the future land use map, and then the fact that you're seeing the commercial mixed use 3 stories, which again is the full breadth of commercial uses, being put immediately adjacent to low scale residential zoning. So the R4 that's immediately adjacent, there are some policies in the comprehensive plan that speak to density transitions and commercial impacts close to existing low scale residential. So just wanted to highlight, if the rezoning is approved, it would amend the future land use map on this site to community mixed use. And there are no outstanding issues with the request. Your deadline for action, again, is February 10th of 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions for staff.
Thank you very much. Moving to public comment. The applicant and those in favor will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. And please introduce yourself when you come to the podium.
Hello, how are you? My name is Jafar Al-Haddad, one of the applicants for this specific application. So it's for, as mentioned in the slides, is to change potentially from R6 to CX3 commercial. Basically, our idea is just to increase the potential of this specific property and for the surrounding areas, because it is in an area where it's near industrial and commercial zone properties, so it would allow for developmental changes in terms of commercial spaces for retail or some stores like that. It increases development intensity and adds substantial job opportunities, and it is consistent with the comprehensive that was stated. And yep, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in support of this project? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any members of the public opposed to this case will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. And seeing none, we'll bring it back to the table. Comments from the commissioners? Thoughts? Yes, Commissioner Fox.
Question I guess it's for staff, related to the potential for the 50-foot Neuse River riparian buffer, and how that determination process works.
The Sally Hoyt, Raleigh Stormwater. The water feature on the east side of the site appears on the Wake County soil maps, which means that if no further action is taken, it will be a buffered stream. However, the owner or applicant could seek a stream determination from the state, from NCDEQ, and if they determine that it doesn't, that it no longer meets the qualifications of being determined as a stream, then the buffer would not apply.
Follow up? Given that, I would be interested in seeing a condition requiring a 50-foot buffer, regardless of the DEQ determination. I believe that would actually serve the purpose of some of the density transitions as well.
Thank you. Any, I see some heads nodding. Any other comments on this case, or on that aspect, or otherwise in this case?
This is kind of a question for staff, and just because we were just talking about it at Z92, since this is a frequent transit area, I just want to make sure I understand that it's R6 under the frequent transit development option. That would apply to this because it goes a quarter mile from the street's edge. Is that how it's calculated? And then if you're looking at R6, multi-unit living, I guess 1,200 square foot, that means you could put a unit per 1,200 square feet of the lot size in total, and I guess there's a buffer too, so the buffer taken away. I just want to make sure I understand that. Up
Are you
to 12
speaking to the
units too, right?
the like minimum lot area per unit?
Uh-huh.
Yes, so that does pertain to the gross lot acreage.
And with or without the buffer, the stream buffer that would potentially apply? I guess I'm asking, like to the total lot or to just the buildable part without the buffer?
My understanding is that it applies to the total site area. That's what the language says. I don't think it means specifically buildable area.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Raines.
Thanks, Chair Miller. I'd echo what Commissioner Fox's statement was about adding a condition for a buffer along the stream line. I'd also like to see a condition added regarding the urban form. Staff recommended several options for frontage, so I'd recommend the applicant pick one of those and provide that as a condition.
Thank you. Before I bring the applicant back to respond to these, any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, would the applicant like to respond to either items related to the buffer or the frontage?
So as for the buffer, yeah, we would be open to both of those conditions.
Okay, open to the buffer and a new frontage condition?
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Then with that, our next Planning Commission meeting is January 9th. So with holidays, for the applicant to get these conditions in, that would need to be November 29th, is that correct? I'm sorry, December 29th? It's usually 2 Fridays before, right?
It'll be the 29th of December.
Okay.
Which is a business day.
That is a business day. So in order for, if I may address the applicant, I should just talk to her. If we defer this case to our January 9th meeting in order to allow you time to make those recommendations, then the changes will need to be made and submitted to the city by December 29th. Does that provide the applicant enough time to make those changes? Okay, thank you. Then, in that case, I will defer this case to January 9th in order to provide the applicant time to make changes to the conditions with respect to the buffer and the frontage.
Can we make that a motion and everybody vote on the deferral?
Sure.
Yeah, we started doing that at council, so I wanted to hear.
Okay, I so move. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Oh, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, sorry.
Yes, that's new. Happy to. Moving on to item E2 in the agenda, rezoning case Z4123 at Buffalo Road. This case is to change approximately 27.31 acres from CX3 with conditions to CX4 with conditions. Yes, Commissioner Fox.
I would like to request a recusal on this. My firm has a contractual relationship with an entity having interest in these properties.
Thank you very much. Without objection, I'd like to recuse Commissioner Fox. We will now turn to Bronwyn Reedus for a presentation from city planning staff.
Thank you. Bronwyn Reedus, Planning and Development. So the next case is Z41, request to rezone portions of 8,301 and 8,317 Buffalo Road. Those areas are highlighted here and shown in red. The existing zoning is commercial mixed use 3 stories with conditions. Requested zoning is commercial mixed use 4 stories with conditions. Your deadline for action is February 10th. So zoning in the area is predominantly low-scale residential. The surrounding area is currently Wake County jurisdiction, so it's Wake County R30. Just to the south of the site is Knightdale jurisdiction. This site was actually annexed back in 2006, so it's been city limits for quite a while now. However, it is a satellite city limits site. Here's a look at the existing development in the area. As you can see, it is sparsely developed with that low-scale residential. A lot of it is kind of agricultural in nature. East, or actually west along Buffalo Road, at the intersection of Buffalo Road and Forestville Road, you might be familiar with a lot of development approvals and rezoning, annexation requests and approvals that have been happening over in that area. This is a couple of miles east of that. Here's a look at the site from Buffalo Road. As you can see, very wooded today. The applicant has proposed 5 conditions here. The first being setting a limit for the amount of retail that could be built here, so 53,000 square feet. The second is putting a maximum dwelling units cap at 350. The third, limiting signage to a medium profile or low profile sign. And then prohibiting a number of uses here that would otherwise be allowed in commercial mixed use. And then finally, providing a minimum 15-foot wide street yard along Buffalo Road. Here's a look at the estimated change in entitlement. The proposed zoning is limited by that zoning condition number 2. So the number of units is limited to 350. Because of the other zoning conditions, you'll see a reduction in the amount of office square footage and retail square footage as well. So because we're kind of in the satellite city limits here, the request is scoring lower for the transportation and energy analysis for basically all of the indicators. It does have an average transportation cost index, meaning that it's an average cost of transportation in this area. The nearest bus service is about 3 miles away, down in Knightdale. The request does add to the housing supply, and it's allowing for different kinds of housing and smaller units. However, it's not within walking distance of transit and does not include any subsidized units. There are a higher percentage of people of color in this area than the citywide average. There's a slightly lower percentage of low-income earners in this area than the citywide average, 26% versus 29%. And housing costs in this area have been increasing much slower than the rest of the city. They have been increasing. So looking at 2.6% increase versus 25.5% increase over a period of 5 years. So the future land use designation for this site is neighborhood mixed use with a little bit of low-scale residential in the corner there. The requested commercial mixed use 4 stories with conditions is not consistent with this future land use designation. I'll note that, the existing zoning today of commercial mixed use 3 stories would also likely be inconsistent with that future land use designation. The request is consistent with is inconsistent with the future land use map, but is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall. Consistent policies here speak to managing commercial development impacts. This is one that we saw in the last case, being in close proximity to existing and future low-scale residential, and then zoning for housing, housing variety. Inconsistent policies here are the future land use map, and then the next 2 you see here have to do with height, really. So the comprehensive plan does recommend a maximum height of 3 stories in this area. So that's why you're seeing those being flagged as inconsistent. So this would require an amendment to the future land use map if approved. It would amend the site to community mixed use from the neighborhood mixed use and low-scale residential current future land use designations. There are no outstanding issues, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. We will now turn to public comment. Oh, yes.
Just ask a quick clarifying
Yes, sure.
question. Bronwyn, you said the request adds to the housing supply. It looks like it takes away from the housing supply. Was that just a misstatement, or?
So it certainly decreases the entitlement allowed on the site today. I think overall it is, I noted it as that because it's an increase from what's existing out there today. But that's correct, that is a significant decrease in the entitlement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Yes?
I just wanted to flag that the conditions for the larger area on this case include dedication of land for a fire station. That would be removed by this request. To my knowledge, the dedication has not yet been made. And we have some transition and fire review staff. Lorraine Eubanks, who's been with us for some time now, has left to go work for the town of Cary. And I don't know if the applicant can, if the applicants could speak to the fire station, that would be very helpful.
We got that. Thank you very much. Then moving to public comment, the applicant and those in favor will have a total of 10 minutes to speak.
Good morning, members of Planning Commission. I get is my presentation up here? Isabel Maddox here, P.O. Box 946-27602, here today with David Mason of Landever Development, the prospective developer here. A couple things about this case just on the outset. One, I want you to look at this case as where we are now, which is CX3, where we're going is CX4. So it's not a big jump. And to address the comment about the fire, yes. And the other thing really important here is this is part of a larger development. As you can see here, just with the red line, just south of that red line is what we're talking about today. However, the yellow line is the larger Landover. Rivertown is the name of this development, Rivertown Development. And a rezoning was done, a satellite rezoning for this whole site. Actually, there were 2 zonings done in 2006 as a satellite annexation and rezoning. Then in 2022, we came in and rezoned everything but the little piece we're talking about today, mainly just to clean up some old conditions, but also to increase the number of dwelling units permitted. And so there, on the balance of this tract, there are 1,000 units allowed, and I think the subdivision plan that's has been submitted proposes like 980 units. And these are a complete range of units from single-family detached, senior housing, duplexes, townhouses. So a range. The only thing that really are not included are apartments, which is what we propose in this case. So this will kind of complete the full range of residential types for this overall development site. So just continuing on, there's the zoning map. And she went over the conditions. I don't think I need to belabor that point. We are slightly decreasing the entitlement. We're, as you saw in the staff report, the quantities of retail and office, we're not going to do any office. We do propose, ultimately, we'd like to put some small retail uses here, but the traffic will actually decrease on this particular site. There has been extensive work by this developer to enter into a utility services agreement with the city of Raleigh, and they will spend, I was just talking to my client about it, $3 to $4 million in extending water and sewer to this site. Also, the transportation improvements to be added here are significant. It could be in the range of $5 to $6 million. It's a little bit unclear because there's, as you know, because you've seen a lot of cases on this Buffalo corridor, there are a lot of different developments going in, and the hope is that everybody will pay their share. But right now, our TIA has significant, overwhelming transportation improvements to widen the road and build out right-of-way. So even though this particular case doesn't add a lot of those things, those are coming with the project overall. On the fire station, going back, the 2006 case did require the dedication of some land for a fire station or community building. With the recent case, the larger case approved in 2022, we did retain that condition in that part of the case. And in fact, the subdivision plan now in play includes a fire station site, which is going to be right there on that. God, I can't hit this right. Let me clear that. On
Isabel,
that far,
could you maybe put that in presentation mode to make it just a little bit bigger? It's really hard to read.
yeah, I agree. I don't know how to do that. Okay.
Oops.
Great. That's not that much better, but right here is where the far right, piece of this property, there is a fire station site. We've been back and forth with the city fire department for months, and they have approved the site, and that site will be dedicated and conveyed to the city. And do you have a timing of when that's actually going to happen?
Yes. We've been working very closely with Sarah Beasley and her staff, and we work very closely with Lorraine Eubanks to identify that location. So when we do the subdivision of this parcel from the rest of the property, we will also dedicate the 2 acres for the fire station site that's required of the zoning. That is just to the east of the secondary entrance into the larger project. So that will be forthcoming. We have the preliminary subdivision plans approved. We are in the process of, we're very close to having construction drawing approval, SPR approval. for the Phase 1 of the residential project. We think that'll occur over the next 4 to 5 weeks. And what we have agreed to with Ms. Beasley is that we would begin the subdivision process and the dedication of the fire station site immediately upon the completion of the SPR process. So that will happen very, very quickly in the new year.
So just to continue, we are sort of decreasing the traffic here. So to summarize, we are consistent with the comprehensive plan. It is inconsistent with the FLUM, but as per your staff report, this request improves consistency with the future land use map. And the current zoning is already inconsistent with the future land use map. So we do think, while not technically consistent with the future land use, we are improving consistency and are consistent with the comp plan. There will be a reduction in traffic. Fire station donation is pending. Significant infrastructure improvements will be done with this project. And we feel like it rounds out the development proposal to allow apartments and some mixed use there. And we think that the height, we have increased the height by 1 story. That's the main really objective here. And if you look at the site, you'll see that that additional height will be well buffered by the rest of the development. So people aren't going to have a 4-story building, right on top of them. What did I do here? So anyway, we feel like this plan is a fairly minor zoning change. Because of the fire station donation, we really would like to request that additional story. I think that will improve the efficiency of the site and allow us to have that full complement of different types of residential uses, with the possibility of adding some retail uses, as the market comes to this site. And I think that this area is certainly, in 2006, that was somewhat of a pipe dream for the city to get there, but now I think it's reality, and you've seen all the development coming just to the west of us on Buffalo. So we request your approval of this case. We don't think it's a big leap, but it's an important one for my client. And David and I are both here to be able to answer any questions, or try to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in support of this project? Seeing none, moving on. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Also seeing none, we'll bring it back to the table. Any initial questions, comments from the commissioners? I may kick us off with one for staff. Could you talk to us about the implication of removing that? We hear about the intention is to dedicate 2 acres for a fire station. Can staff talk to the implications of removing that condition in the rezoning?
So I believe there is area set aside on the subdivision plans as like a civic lot. I was trying to pull those plans just now.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Can I request an excuse? I need to be excused for the rest of the meeting.
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Yes, without objection. Commissioner McCrimmon is excused. Thank you.
So I think even if it is shown on subdivision plan, it's still not dedicated yet, even if a plan has been approved, development plan, a construction plan, that could still be amended and changed. So I think the zoning condition would be the binding part of that. I do think it is still an existing condition as a part of the larger development. That zoning was amended back in 2022. So if you'll allow me, I'm trying to pull those up just now so we can double check, make extra sure what the language is there.
Thank you.
I can speak to that question a little
Sure.
bit more clearly.
Thank you.
The fire station dedication was applicable in the zoning to both the residential R4 parcels when it was originally zoned, as well as to the CX parcel when it was zoned in 2006. And so the process was simply to work with Lorraine Eubanks and the members of the fire department staff to determine where they thought that they most likely wanted to have that parcel. It could have been on either one. And so within our approved preliminary subdivision plans, that parcel is identified on the northeast corner of the CX zoned property. So it is identified in our PSP as in that location, and that is exactly where we intend to dedicate that property to the city of Raleigh from. We don't have any plans in deviating from that.
Thank you.
Yes, so the condition is in that zoning, which also went through a text change amendment effective in 2022, so recently. So if requested by the city during site plan or subdivision approval, whichever occurs, owner shall dedicate to the city a 2 to 3 acre site. Oh, sorry. Whichever occurs, owner shall dedicate to the city a parcel of not less than 2 acres, the location of which to be mutually agreed upon for a fire/public safety station. So that's condition C as a part of the amended conditions effective June 3rd, 2022.
Thank you. Mr. York, did you have a follow-up?
I was just saying that's a condition on the R4 property to the north. Adoption of this rezoning would remove that condition from the CX property.
Could the applicant provide more explanation if they intend to provide the fire site? What is the reason for removing that zoning condition?
Well, I think that as a practical matter, the fact that we have agreed on the site and the fire department has approved it and there's a subdivision pending with it, we didn't see any need to include it here. We do think there's a legal requirement that dictates that a fire station site be provided, and we are in the process of providing that. And so I didn't think there was any need to include it on this case as well.
It sounds like there may be some, would staff agree with that it is required on the CX parcel based on the current activity, or?
I think we'd like to see the condition remain.
Okay.
I think
since the dedication is not complete.
There's not a specific requirement that it be on either of the parcels in the other case, but yeah, I mean.
Would the applicant consider adding it back in?
Yeah, we can add it back in.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah, I apologize. I maybe didn't understand this in the presentation, but I'm still confused how going up from CX3 to CX4 lowers the units allowed.
You want to speak to that?
Just purely from the conditions, that's all. Okay.
Yeah, so they added a zoning condition that puts a cap on the number of units. So it's capped at 350 per the applicant's zoning condition.
Got it.
And that is smaller than what was available under current zoning.
Thank you. Any other questions?
And this is for, it's intended to be like a senior living facility, the whole area?
No.
No?
This will be, market.
Got it.
Available to anybody.
Yeah, and if I might respond a little bit further, so to make sure everyone's familiar with what we've done to this point. So the property, we went through rezoning about a year ago, and we committed to and just received preliminary subdivision plan approval for the R4 area under the neighborhood conservation designation. So we are intentionally setting aside well over 40% of the almost 300 acres in that part of the project as dedicated open space buffers, et cetera. So we were very intentional. I think probably this project is maybe the largest ever done within the city of Raleigh that hits that designation and those responsibilities for setting aside open space. And so this was just a small piece left of that, and we felt like it was appropriate actually to sort of reduce the zoning and reduce traffic and really kind of right-size this for the remaining developable acreage on that front corridor there in front of the property, inclusive of the dedication to the fire station site. So we're really trying to right-size the zoning and conditions for this parcel now. And those zoning conditions, or excuse me, the zoning that was done in 2006 really was not applicable to how you would develop the site today. So that's really why we were here.
Got it. That's good to know the detail about the open space. I was looking at the presentation that there's, the closest public transit is like 3 miles away, closest stop. And obviously there's not, there's nothing y'all can do to make a line to this. But I do think it would be really important to have something dedicated for an eventual public transit stop if there's going to be that many people moving to an area like that is this far out. And like y'all said, that part of Raleigh is definitely developing quick. And to have mixed use on the frontage of it like that, I would love to see some kind of condition that had some kind of public transit infrastructure there along the road.
Let me respond a little differently to your request, because there's other background here that I think it's important to understand. So as you probably know and have seen in your work in this area, that Buffalo corridor area, including the I-540 overpass, has legacy traffic-related issues. Our project was given multiple millions of dollars worth of improvements that we needed to participate in that corridor, starting at the I-540 bridge and working its way east all the way to our project. And so we've worked very closely with NCDOT, we've worked very closely with the City of Raleigh's Transportation Department and with the town of Knightdale to try to address the major implications of infrastructure and needs that are happening as it relates to transportation, within this corridor. So I at least want you to be aware of that, because that is, it's such a large amount of money and a large amount of commitment that it's highly impactful on our project and its ability to even go forward. I mean, this project was originally envisioned in 2006. And so here we are this many years later, and finally someone's figured out how to perhaps get this thing on the ground and developed. And we're spending several $1 million on infrastructure improvements and not just transportation, but water and sewer to bring utilities to the site as well, and working closely with a joint venture agreement with the City of Raleigh to do that utility work as well for that area. So I'm not opposed to trying to find a way to put some sort of transportation, stop there. I just don't know, with it being an isolated satellite annexed property and everything around it being county, how long it would take before the City of Raleigh would provide some sort of service there. Clearly, we can work on the east side of the secondary entrance with the fire department. There is a little bit of land just south of their parcel that might be a great location for something like that, and we would certainly not be opposed to finding a way to utilize that area between the existing wetlands, which we're going to, obviously not disturb, the location for the fire station site along that entrance to the second entry point into that project. So we'd be happy to, consider that further if we need to.
Thank you very much. Overall, I'm in supportive of this type of project going in here, especially with the dedications involved. It sounds like there are some members of staff that have advised it would be good to see that condition added back in, and the applicant has agreed to that. Any other comments and questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, would January 9th meeting, would that provide enough time to add that condition with respect to the fire station?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Then with that, I'd like to make a motion to defer this case to January 9th in order to add a condition related to fire station dedication. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to approval of the minutes. We have two items, minutes to approve from our November 28th Planning Commission meeting and our November 29th special meeting from the Committee of the Whole. Are there any comments on either of the minutes? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? Second. Commissioner Fox has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Moving on to other business. The first item is our fiscal year 21 to 22 comprehensive planning annual progress report. And I will turn it over to Sarah Shaughnessy for that.
Hi. Yeah, so this item is just included for your information. Every year, planning staff does a review of all the cases that have been adopted or are pending in the last fiscal year. So the report attached in the agenda just summarizes your actions and council actions related to rezonings, text changes to zoning conditions, and comprehensive plan amendments, and tries to draw out some themes that you've seen in the past year.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'd encourage everyone to read that. It's very interesting to see the work that we've done, and look forward to seeing the next one. Moving on to our revision of the Planning Commission's Rules of Procedure. At the October 31st, well, I'll turn it over to Bynum, perhaps, to present this one.
Sure. So during your retreat, you remember Halloween, right? It's a long time ago. You all discussed the possibility of reorganizing your committee structure, your subcommittee structure. You've discussed that a couple times at the table since then, and based on that conversation, we have brought forward a proposed amendment to your rules of procedure for your consideration. It is merely a proposal. If it doesn't work, I know you will revise to get it the way you want it. So what's changing? The Planning Commission right now has the full Committee of the Whole. This does not impact the Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole will continue as it has been. But the subcommittee structure would change. The chair would retain the ability to appoint temporary subcommittees on topics, themes, et cetera, as desired or seen as needed by the commission, and would still have the authority to appoint a chair for a subcommittee and members of the subcommittee at will for any topic. But then two standing established subcommittees would be identified by the rules of procedure. One would be the text change committee, and the other would be what we're calling the matters that committee could take up could be very, very broad, right? It could be infrastructure and mobility. It could be comprehensive planning. It could be stormwater. It could be all of the many things that you all discuss at this table and in your committee conversations. But what that sets up is a situation where you would all continue to serve on Committee of the Whole. That would not change. And then the rules of procedure do not spell out, but the anticipated operating strategy would be that every member of the commission would serve on one subcommittee. You would either serve on text change or strategic planning. You would no longer have to figure out who serves on two subcommittees, right? Because that's how it had been. That had been a challenge for you all most recently, that with infrastructure and mobility and strategic planning, getting the membership and the quorums together was really presenting a challenge. So this sets up just those two subcommittees and calls what I jokingly refer to as the committee of the other, establishes in the rules of procedure as the strategic planning committee. Happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you. Would love questions and comments. I know that we generally liked it, but there were other folks that had other thoughts afterwards. So yes, Commissioner Otwell.
I like the changes that were made. I think it's exactly in line with what we were asking for. I had a question reviewing the rest of the document. It mentions that any planning commissioner is welcome to attend. This is just a clarification question. Any planning commissioner is welcome to attend any committee meeting. Does that person count towards quorum? No. Okay.
No, it does not.
Thank you. Other comments from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
I just want to say thank you, because I know I raised this, and I mean, I think this does exactly what I had in mind when I brought it up, so I appreciate it. I think this not only would address the challenges we've had with making quorum sometimes, but the challenges that we've had with sending meaningful and impactful discussion items to the committees. And I think whether it's infrastructure or mobility or comprehensive planning, it's still strategic planning. So yeah, just thank you. This is exactly what I had in mind.
Thank you very much. Other comments from the commissioners? Seeing none.
Lanny,
Yes.
I'm hesitating. I do have reservations about doing this. When you create committee structures, generally you like to disperse and divide membership and also access of power. So I'm saying it in terms of being cognizant. We're all congenial and get along very well. But I could see this being a significant problem in the future.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by access of power?
So I can see that. Having a committee that does text changes and focuses primarily on text changes, which come directly from the city council, is a pretty easy line of direct instruction, authorization, action, and then it moves forward. Having solely one other committee, acknowledging that the chair can form ad hoc committees at will, but having one other committee which may not have a direct line of authorization, procedures and actions which it's trying to accomplish. I'll just say it's unusual. And I've not seen with the Planning Commission in the past 20 plus years. I mean, sometimes committees go dormant for a while, but I've not seen a committee structure similar to this. And my thought is there may be a reason for that.
I think I understand what you're saying, but it seems like right now we have two committees with no real authority, or we're not being authorized really to. I just feel like we're not, perhaps when these committees were set up, they had more specific guidance and they were doing more. Right now it feels like text change is the only committee that's really doing something, that's going back with a recommendation to council, and we have two other committees that are just meeting to talk about things that we're interested in.
So I hear that, and I would say there's probably another way to address that in terms of what goes to the committee and then how the committee functions versus changing the bylaws of the Planning Commission, which then a future commission may need to revise again to operate in a different manner.
Okay.
It's functioned well for many years, so it's just an alternative perspective. I wasn't able to be here when you all discussed it.
I do think there's the difference in the Planning Commission's business since the current committee structure was established, and that is that before 2013, the Planning Commission reviewed site plans, and there was a natural need to dive deep on transportation issues related to site plans and on other planning issues related to that the Strategic Planning Committee took up. You haven't had site plans since I came here long enough ago that I saw one discussed in front of the Planning Commission, and then it was over. But I think part of that structure is tied to that old roster of business, right? And so now your business is largely rezonings, text changes, comprehensive plan amendments. Occasionally you see some special items, but that's your content. And so I would encourage you to consider, I'm not advocating for 2 subcommittees or 3, I don't have a position on that, but I would just say you would want to think about what is the business that the commission discusses and where do you need to dive deep outside of committee of the whole, because as a body, you all tend to prefer anything thick and juicy to go to the committee of the whole so that you all have the opportunity to discuss.
So I'd also add, historically, Strategic Planning Committee, the report that you just presented, just the summary of the actions, they had historically reviewed commonalities or common threads between zoning conditions and made observations where a text change might be warranted and made that recommendation to City Council. So I think they could be a very effective committee if used in that manner. I also acknowledge the tendency that if I'm not there to talk about it, then it didn't happen, or I don't understand how it works. But I'm gonna say, having served as the chair, there is also a need to balance the length of these meetings. And when things can happen in committees, the majority of the discussion, I think that's helpful. So in some sense, some of the items that I was recused from, but obviously I'm here to listen, could have been split up into discussion areas. And that just might be something else to consider.
I thank you for those comments about the Strategic Planning Committee. I personally would be interested in reviving some of that work at the Planning Commission, figuring out the right way to do it, and the right is something maybe perhaps to chew on a little bit between now and the next meeting. I was open to voting on this item if we had some true clarity, but I think that there's some work of the Planning Commission thinking about what we want to do moving forward and next year. To maybe we could talk offline on a non-quorum basis, but looping in everybody so that we could get more clarity around some of that to clarify then what structure might be best to serve some of those goals for next year. I'm not sure that we're going to get that at this table today. Yeah. Other comments from the commissioners? Just to continue the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of deferring this. I hadn't considered Commissioner Fox's perspective before, and I think it's worth discussion.
Thank you. Other comments?
Do you want to put it in committee? I'm sorry. Sorry.
An ad hoc one, please.
I couldn't resist.
You'll be here all night. I will defer this then. Do I need to make a motion on this?
Not for this.
Okay. In that case, I'll hold this item at the table until our next Planning Commission meeting in January.
So that's when we'll discuss it again?
We'll discuss it again,
Okay.
yes.
I'm all for additional discussion. I'm not necessarily that crazy about the ad hoc discussions, though. I'd rather discuss it as a commission.
Okay, I mean, we could continue now.
There are enough demands on my time that trying to get together with other commissioners and then trying to compare notes, and I like discussing items too where it can be heard by
I mean,
everybody.
if we have,
I mean, we don't
you know,
have to
10
do it
minutes to
today, but
spare.
it's just.
But I mean, I think that that's a valid point, and, you know, all jokes aside, I mean, it going to a committee where it can be, you know, robustly discussed and come out with a recommendation is fine too, where we can carve some time out for it. I am not as concerned about the power dynamics that were proposed. I mean, I could maybe see that in certain environments, but I think it's rare enough that I don't think. But looks like you have some history or knowledge or something else that I don't have in that regard. But I think if we then don't go the route of consolidating the committees, then I would recommend that we do put a more robust action plan in place for either committee and say exactly what goes to each one and then be diligent about putting them there. having chaired the strategic plan committee, you know, I was at the will of the commission and what we could discuss. Obviously, some of my passions are affordable housing, so that came up a couple of times, but at some point, though, to use it to the effect, I think that one chair member had many years ago with the intention, but it has lacked that same momentum and not documenting the process of what goes there. So long-winded, but can we come up with the distinctive then traits of what goes to the, and then be diligent about it? Can we do that? So I assume it would be adding a lot more to the bylaws about each committee and what goes to each committee?
And not just what goes to the committee, but what comes from the committee. Like
Correct.
what is the committee expected to do with it? I mean, other than just get together and talk about things that are interesting, are we going to make some sort of?
Well, let's talk about the options that we have,
Vision.
right? So the tool, we can obviously vote on rezoning cases and vote to what comes to us. We can also vote to ask council to do certain things. We could vote to ask them to make a text change. We could vote to ask them to study something, to authorize a study, or to authorize a text change, excuse me. Are there any other items that we can ask for from council other than asking them for authorization on a text change or a study?
I mean, we do
You can
that.
ask for a comp plan amendment.
Plan
You can-
amendment.
You can see, you could make a suggestion based on what the comprehensive plan says about a certain area, if it's appropriate for a city-initiated rezoning, or, I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can recommend. Your statutory requirements are to review and make recommendations on map amendments, text amendments, and comprehensive plan amendments. Other than that, you can do whatever else city council authorizes you to do. And so that's why we go through the process of you all making a motion, seeking authorization to do A, B, C, or D.
At the risk of stirring some controversy, I would be interested in the Planning Commission, in the work of the committees, to include both what we're required to do, and then in addition to focus more on what's coming out of the committees and not what's going into them. So if the committees could focus on specific action items to ask for authorization from council for specific text changes, comp plan amendments or studies or other items, I think that would be certainly a worthwhile endeavor for the commission. And I think perhaps either committee could do some of that work, especially with respect to text change. There could be, some requests for authorization on text changes could come out of text changes. Perhaps the other requests, or either could come out of either. But perhaps the committee could be more focused on those types of action items coming out.
If that's the case, I have a recommendation.
Sure.
If we could plan to meet, then both committees plan to meet in January and have essentially used that opportunity to hash out what the purpose of each committee would be, and then what the expectations of that committee would be, what would come out of that, what would go to. But we have those meetings in January respectively. So infrastructure mobility would meet, strategic planning would meet, and we would then propose to the Planning Commission the outcomes of our discussion with direction.
So to have all three of the legacy committees meet in January to discuss this topic?
All three would be fine. I'm thinking specifically just the two that were on deck there for consolidation, but if we want to do all three, I'm fine with that as well.
I would be fine if that's what you guys want to do. I'm not sure that the scope is beyond what we already discussed here. I mean, to that point, I mean, if that's the will of the commission, then by all means, I just
want us to have the time to talk about it. I mean, generally speaking, I mean, even to Commissioner Fox's point that, some of the motions made today could have come from a committee.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how we operate in practice is we do this at the table. So really, we're not fully utilizing the opportunities, it sounds like then, that these committees could afford. So then we would just have to be diligent. We would have to self-restraint, say, okay, this is a proposal that we're talking about. Let's send it to the committee. It would draw some time, but, you know, that those, I think, we would need to discuss that at the individual committees and say, okay, this is what needs to happen for this committee to be successful.
If I could respond
Sure.
to that, because some of the motions that were made today, I wanted to discuss actually in committee, but in the past, when there have been hot items like that, and we tried to send it to committee, then there would be, oh, but we think the entire commission should discuss that because we're all interested in it. So that's why I think sometimes things get handled at the table where everybody can discuss it, because in the past, when we've tried to send it to committee, everybody doesn't get to discuss it. So we need to either be, if you're not on the committee, then maybe you can come to the meeting, but that's an issue that's going to be dealt with in committee. And to your point about, if I could,
Go ahead.
your point about the committee's meeting in January and discussing, I'm fine with that. I'm just not at all confident that we'll have quorum on the committees to actually discuss it. So, you know, our time is valuable. I mean, we are committed. We are volunteers. I recognize that, but we show up to the committee meetings. Some of us drive almost an hour to get to them, only to find out we don't have quorum.
Mm-hmm.
Members of the public come out sometimes. Sorry, we have to cancel the meeting. So, you know, I just want to make sure that we are being most efficient with our time, with our resources, with staff's time, with the public's time, and that we're actually giving something back to council that they can use and do something with.
And to your point regarding, you know, having discussion but wanting the entire committee, that also kind of speaks to that power dynamic that I don't see, that I have not experienced, but I'm, you know, because we do bring it back and we do discuss it as a whole. So I really find the committee, and particularly having led one, fairly ineffective in that regard. There's just, you have a conversation and you bring it back, but there was really no tangible action items.
I think, Commissioner Bennett, you made an excellent point. Part of the solution that's on the table was to solve the problem of attendance. I think attendance is the problem. And although acknowledging this is a volunteer situation, perhaps we might hold ourselves more accountable. Obviously, we're sitting here right now looking at each other, but there are other people who perhaps could find opportunity to attend more often.
Well, and to that end, also, part of, if we change the committees as chair, I appoint each of the committees and we'll take that into account and perhaps change the committee appointments if we reduce down to 2. For the following year, so that it's not just text change and then everybody else with the historical legacy appointments, but instead changing up some of the committee appointments as well to address some of those concerns. Good concerns. Yes.
Follow up on my earlier question. Guest commissioners at a committee meeting don't count for quorum. Do they get to vote? Do they get to sit at the table and participate in the discussion?
It's up to the chair as to what participation level they're invited to take. But, you know, I mean, if they're going to open it up to the public to speak, you know, other commissioners could get up and speak and share their concerns and so forth. I mean, it depends on the chair. And the purpose of the committee structures is to have less formal conversation about things. That's why in some of the committees, everybody's sitting around the table, public and committee members. I would like to just forecast that unlike this year, but like previous years, the text change committee I anticipate is going to have a heavier load, not necessarily starting in January, but there's the potential for we have some manuals that may come in front of you. The stormwater manual, I think, is the first one we're anticipating to see, and that may be as early as February. And so, and those are, we treat them as text changes because they're referenced in the UDO and they're regulatory, and so they have to go through the same process. And that's a lot quicker than, a small change here or there. Staff's working on an omnibus that council has authorized that will be coming to you all next year. And then there's a streetscape sign combined text change. And then there's consideration of another sign text change. And so
I was going to say, for
the
those.
green building, and there's a lot of stuff that may get to the point of being ready for you all's review, you all being, it's the planning commission's responsibility right now, we send them to the text change. But, and so I thought another reason besides attendance was also sort of share the load and the burden of work.
And for those newer to the commission as well, if you just Google Raleigh current development activity, you can see the list of all the pending text changes and all that kind of stuff as well.
I was just going to add, somebody said this earlier, but I think it might be repeating. It's okay for the committees to not meet. Text change has not met for several months because there's not business for the text change committee to discuss. I think I have certainly experienced chairs of infrastructure and mobility and also strategic planning committee who were not comfortable with not meeting, and were not really subscribed to the philosophy of if the commission hasn't referred something to you to discuss, you don't have to meet. And instead of saying, hey, that's an hour I got back, really we're trying to find a reason to meet, find things to discuss. The commission will find things for the committees to discuss. But I think, if there's a legitimate thing to discuss, I think quorum is a lot easier to come by if it's something that the commission has referred to you. Yeah.
Yes.
Comment and a question. Does increasing the size of the subcommittee increase our chances of making quorum? Like the percentages are still the same of the proportion of folks that have to show up. We have trouble making quorum for our full commission and regular commission sometimes as well.
I think it's more about changing the membership of the committees for the folks that continue to not show up or give notice that they're not going to show up. So that those are more split evenly between the two committees, if I'm being.
I just wanted to address one thing that Commissioner Otwell asked about other commissioners attending committee meetings that you're not a part of. One of the things that I enjoyed when we were virtual was that all of the committee meetings were streamed. So, I attended all of Text Change, and I learned a lot that way. And, I asked questions. I offered comments sometimes. I didn't vote, but there was benefit for me in attending because sometimes with these really complicated text changes, it helps hearing the staff presentation and the discussion. So I don't think, the other commissioners necessarily would need to vote, but there is a benefit in being able to attend. That was, I wanted to address that. And I have another comment. I can't, I'm trying to find the right way to say it. I just need to think about it.
Thank you.
I'm trying to find the right words.
Perhaps a path forward today, and in the interest, I'm going to have to leave very shortly. School pickup waits for no one. But if the topic of having two committees overall is, if it is settled, I've heard, there's some confusion or just some more discussion to be had regarding exactly what the committees other than text change should be doing. And I think we can continue that discussion. Maybe we could have a whole meeting just on that and come up with a specific agenda, everything from affordable housing, meaningful height bonuses to how do we deal with NCODs to all these things, with the goal being that we actually recommend action to council, coming up with an agenda for next year, perhaps splitting some of those between text change and this other committee. I think that would be a really interesting, and I would encourage everyone to attend, whether you're on that committee or not. But of course, you're not required to. But is there an open question still about whether 3 committees versus 2 committees is of concern? I'm not sure that we got to the bottom of that question. And I wanted, Commissioner Fox sort of briefly alluded to certain power concerns. I have to be honest, I'm not sure that I fully understand them. So if there's anything,
I mean, the only thing I could possibly think of is that if half of the committee is in text change and half the committee is in this strategic planning, and then strategic planning comes through and says, okay, we have this recommendation, we need majority, the text change could overwhelm the strategic members sitting at the table, and then it would be a stalemate, or someone could be rendered, neutral. Like there's no effect. But I guess I could see that in,
I think that could always
maybe a
happen.
major transition for a period of time, but.
So I guess, is anybody up for reappointment in 2024?
I am in my final term, which is also why I'm like.
Okay, so just
Yeah.
anticipate at the times when new people are appointed that the dynamic would change.
I feel like you just need to say what
But
you're
that
trying
would
to
be,
say, because some of
but
I was gonna say,
but
when-
the chair is the one that appoints to the committees, and then people sitting at the table want to be part of those committees. So I could see there being a rearrangement of sorts then to create a little bit more equality to that particular effect. I could see that fear, but I don't want to operate from that space, nor do I want to create an opportunity for that. But I don't sense that being an issue, but I acknowledge that we're not in those times.
Right.
Again, we're all
friends here.
collegial,
Okay.
right? We've all known each other for quite some time. It could change.
Yeah.
With one appointment, 2
Okay.
appointments. So I'm not saying I
I
necessarily.
feel like that could happen anyway.
It does, but now it's happening in a situation where you disperse, right?
So I think I understand what you're saying, and I am completely fine with keeping 3 committees if
One is
there
dormant.
is something that for us to do and not just get together and talk. I enjoy discussing these items, but if there's something to do, because I'm just gonna say it, and because I typically just say it. So I think there's already an imbalance of power. I think, based on conversations I've had, the text change committee is the committee respected most by council. It's the committee that makes decisions. It's the committee that all the meaty stuff goes to, and they're authorizing text changes. In effect, the text change committee is like the A-team. The text change committee tends to be the people that end up becoming chair of the commission, and the rest of us are like the out parcels that go to the other committees that don't really do anything but discuss items that are very important to those of us discussing it, but we're just getting together to talk. So I think the other committees need to have the same power as the text change committee. And if they do, I am completely fine with having 3 committees. If they don't, then that's where I have an issue.
I agree. I wonder if it might be helpful if, I'm just going to throw out ideas. I'm acknowledging we're over and that you need to pick up a human.
Yes. We've got about 90 seconds left
If
before I
perhaps
gotta go.
the strategic planning committee was the committee that reviewed all comp plan amendments. It's not atypical from what we may have seen in the past, right? Right? So that might be an attendance thing. But if it was the forum for those types of conversations, I think that
that might address what you've identified.
I think that that's
I like that
really
answer
helpful.
given the fact that I don't think we'll get resolution today, but I think we're getting close and I'm excited about it. So I think I'm going to hold that item at the table till January for more discussion and would love to have additional discussion on this topic. I just literally have to go. With the report of the chair, there's no additional meetings in January, or I'm sorry, until January. This is the final meeting for the year, and thanks for a great year, and we will see you next year. And going down the line for a report of the members.
No comment. Happy holidays.
No report.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays. I'm also going to add, it looks like we do have an agenda item, but not a date for Text Change Committee. TC 723, co-living.
Happy holidays, no report.
I just want to say I'm really proud of everyone for the work on the text change for the New Bern. And I do think that with all the work that we did, I think that the council has a good product regardless of the vote. So thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to serve with you.
Thank you. Report of the Assistant Director, yes.
I just want to say thanks for a great year. You guys have worked very hard this year and have been right here along with staff, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
That,
Happy holidays.
we are adjourned. See you next year.